A plane vanishes without a trace. A colony leaves behind one word carved in wood. A man jumps from the sky with $200,000 and is never seen again. History isn't just written by the victors. Sometimes it's whispered by ghosts, encoded in ruins, or completely unsolved. These are not legends. These are real, documented, investigated, still unanswered. This is 101 historical mysteries that cannot be explained. Strap in. We're diving head first into the weirdest rabbit hole time forgot, where fact feels like fiction and the truth might never come. Before we crack open the first case file, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next descent into history's strangest corners. And hey, drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? What time is it right now? Midnight in Manila? 3 a.m. in Ohio? Let's see just how far this mystery network stretches. The disappearance of Amelia Earhart. It begins with a radio signal, faint and fractured. Somewhere over the vast, indifferent Pacific, a Lockheed Electra skims just above the waves, vanishing into myth. The 2nd of July, 1937, Amelia Earhart and her navigator Fred Noonan are attempting the final leg of their around-the-world flight. They never arrive. They don't crash on radar. They don't wash up on shore. They dissolve. And for nearly a century, humanity has been chasing ghosts through scattered theories and coral atolls. Some say the plane ran out of fuel and simply dropped into the ocean's endless throat. Others whisper about Japanese capture on Saipan. There's even talk of Earhart surviving under a new name, living in quiet anonymity. Bones were found on Nikumaroro Island. Were they hers? Science danced around the possibility, but even DNA can only say so much when time has eaten the answers. The story isn't just about a woman who flew too far, it's about the romantic, terrifying edge of human exploration. Amelia wasn't just flying across the world. She was flying into history, into legend, into that blurry place where fact blurs into fiction. And from that fog of uncertainty rises our next vanishing Marvella chamber of unimaginable beauty, lost to the dark tide of war. The fate of the Amber Room. Picture it, a room carved from fire, amber panels, backed with gold leaf and mirrors, glowing like honey trapped in a palace dream. Built in the 18th century and gifted from Prussia to Russia, the Amber Room was a masterpiece of Baroque opulencia space, so magnificent that it seemed more like a fairy tale than architecture. But then came World War II, and fairy tales turned into nightmares. The Nazis, obsessed with reclaiming cultural treasures, looted the Amber Room from Catherine Palace in 1941. Crated, catalogued, and shipped to Königsberg Castle. It was displayed briefly then. Like Earhart, it disappeared. As the war closed in, Allied bombs rained down on Königsberg. Was the Amber Room destroyed? Hidden in a salt mine? Sunk in a Baltic freighter? No one knows. Every few years, someone claims to have found a fragmented amber panel here. A mosaic there, but the complete room remains elusive. The Amber Room became less a missing object and more a metaphor for everything war takes and never gives back. A cathedral of light, swallowed by fire and silence. And in those shadows waits another phantom of the night tone with a blade, a top hat, and a name soaked in blood and fog. Jack the Ripper's identity. Whitechapel, 1888. The fog rolls in thick as a butcher's apron, and the alleys are soaked with gin and fear. Women are dying brutally, surgically. A hand moves in the dark with the precision of a surgeon and the flourish of a sadist. The press names him Jack the Ripper, a killer so notorious that his murders are remembered by streets and initials: Polly Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, Mary Jane Kelly. 5 women, 1 monster. 0 convictions. The theories swarm like flies over crime scene photographs. A deranged royal? A mad doctor? A failed artist? A vengeful lover? Every decade births a new suspect. DNA from a shawl once pointed to a Polish barber, but the evidence was thin, the testing questionable. The Ripper case is the perfect crime, the kind that birthed the modern detective thriller, the tabloid frenzy, the urban legend. What makes him terrifying isn't just the murder sits, the silence that followed. He vanished, like a phantom evaporating into Victorian smog. And just when you think the Ripper was a one-off ghost story, another cryptic killer emerges from the shadows, this one writing ciphers, taunting police, and turning murder into a twisted puzzle. The Voynich manuscript. It is a book no one can read. Not scholars, not linguists, not codebreakers, not even AI. The Voynich manuscript is 240 pages of confusion bound in calfskin, its faded ink drawing worlds no one can explain. Found in 1912 by a rare book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich, this 15th century codex reads like it was written by an alien librarian on a very bad acid trip. Exotic plants that don't exist. Naked women bathing in green fluid flowing through pipes. Astrological diagrams that resemble the zodiac's fever dream. And a language found nowhere else in human history. Linguistic analysis suggests a structured grammar. Statistical patterns exist. But every attempt to decode the text ends in gibberish or wishful thinking. Was it a cipher? A constructed language? A hoax? If it is gibberish, it's the most beautifully consistent nonsense ever created. If it's real, it may hold forgotten knowledge, lost medicine, or simply the diary of a very bored monk. And yet, its most haunting feature isn't the unknown. It's the possibility that the answers are gone forever. That someone once knew exactly what it meant, and now no one ever will. A book without a key. Like a colony without a trace. And that brings us to the chilling void left behind in the forests of early America. The disappearance of the Roanoke colony. It was supposed to be England's first permanent settlement in the New World. Instead, it became America's first great ghost story. In 1587, over 100 colonists arrived on Roanoke Island, off the coast of present-day North Carolina. Then, just 3 years later, they were gone. No bodies, no wreckage. No sign of violence. Only a single word carved into a post. Croatoan. Governor John White returned to find empty buildings, dismantled fortifications, and his family gone. Theories bloomed like mold. Did they assimilate with friendly native tribes? Were they slaughtered by hostile ones? Did they starve, drown, flee, vanish into the wilderness? Were they taken by something stranger still? Croatoan pointed to nearby Croatoan Island, now Hatteras, but no definitive evidence ever turned up. Every archaeological dig teases clues. English artifacts far inland, Spanish coins, European DNA in modern tribes. But there's no single thread that ties it all together. Just scattered breadcrumbs left by people who disappeared without a final message. A colony swallowed whole by time, their fate more haunting because it feels so close to being knowable. And just when you think it couldn't get more surreal, along drifts a ghost ship, sails torn, food untouched, and no one aboard. The Mary Celeste. She was found drifting silently in the Atlantic on the 4th of December, 1872. The Mary Celeste, a sturdy brigantine en route from New York to Genoa, discovered eerily intact and completely abandoned. Her lifeboat was missing, the crew's belongings untouched, the cargo virtually unspoiled. No signs of struggle, no storm damage, no distress signals. Just an empty ship sailing toward oblivion. The captain, his wife, their young daughter, and a crew of 7 vanished without a trace. The ship's log offered no clues beyond a final, mundane entry 10 days earlier. The galley was stocked. The sails partially set. The crew's foul weather gear hung neatly in place. Whatever happened, it came fast and silent. Theories flail in all directions. Pirates? But nothing was stolen. Mutiny? But why leave the ship in such pristine condition? Alcohol fumes from the cargo, but no signs of fire or explosion. Seaquake? Giant squid? Alien abduction? Each answer only deepens the mystery. The Mary Celeste is the maritime version of an unsent text, something interrupted, forever waiting to be finished. An empty vessel haunted not by ghosts, but by the absence of everything that should have been there. Just like the next deadly zone where absence is a rule, not an exception. The Bermuda Triangle Disappearances. There's a stretch of ocean between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico that has been accused of devouring machines like a cosmic Venus flytrap. The Bermuda Triangle, roughly 500,000 square miles of mystery where ships vanish, planes disappear, and distress signals fade into static. They say compasses spin, electronics die, and time bends. And while the numbers may not exceed other busy maritime regions, the drama is in the pattern. Too many disappearances, too few answers. Flight 1905 Navy bombers vanished during a 1,945 training mission. Their rescue plane also vanished. A cargo ship with 306 souls, the USS Cyclops, disappeared in 1918 without a single SOS. Entire yachts have been found adrift, intact, minus the crew. Sometimes debris is found. Sometimes it's like they were never there. Weather? Human error? Methane bubbles? Sure, maybe. But the myths won't let it rest. Atlantis, UFOs, underwater pyramids all get folded into the triangle's swirling lore. Because this isn't just geography, it's atmosphere. A place where logic goes cloudy, where GPS means nothing, and where the next wave might swallow you without a ripple. But while the triangle plays its games in the sea, something once exploded in the skies of Siberia and left a scar so large it could be seen from space. The Tunguska event, the 30th of June, 1908. A fireball tears through the sky over the Podkamenaya Tunguska River in Siberia. A blast follows. Trees are flattened in every direction for nearly 800 square miles. Locals are thrown from their chairs. Reindeer vaporize. For days afterward, night skies across Europe and Asia glow with eerie light. But there's no crater, no impact site, no chunks of asteroid. Just charred forest, seared soil, and a towering silence. It's called the Tunguska event and explosion, estimated at 1,000 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima, and no one's entirely sure what caused it. Most scientists point to an airburst in asteroid or comet fragment that detonated high in the atmosphere, but no debris was ever definitively linked to it. Some theorize antimatter collisions, alien spacecraft malfunctions, or Nikola Tesla's infamous death ray test. In every version, the cause is a question mark wrapped in trees that still grow crooked from the blast. It was the 20th century's loudest unsolved mystery. A warning shot from space, or something even weirder? Whatever it was, it left the Earth bruised and burning. And deep beneath another body of water, something else has been hiding in plain sight for centuries. The Loch Ness Monster. You've seen the silhouette, a long neck curling from a misty lake, the water rippling like something ancient just stirred. Loch Ness, Scotland, home of the most famous, maybe, monster in modern history. Nessie isn't just a cryptid, it's a cultural icon, a myth draped in tartan and sonar. The earliest reports date back to the 6th century, but it wasn't until 1934, when the infamous surgeon's photograph surfaced, that Nessie made headlines worldwide. That image, a shadowy form rising from the loch, was later revealed to be a hoax. Still, the story refused to die. Sonar scans show massive, moving shapes. Divers find nothing. Tourists flock. Locals shrug. Some say it's a prehistoric plesiosaur that survived extinction. Others claim it's misidentified logs, waves, or eels the size of nightmares. The lake itself is a perfect stage, deep, dark, and cloaked in mystery. But here's the thing: people keep looking. Not because they think they'll find proof, but because they want to. Nessie represents that last sliver of mystery in a world being GPSed into submission. And sometimes, not knowing is the whole point. Speaking of mysteries caught on camera, there's one woman who filmed the JFK assassination from close range. The footage? Real. The woman? Still unidentified. The Babushka Lady. The 22nd of November, 1963, Dallas, Texas. Shots ring out in Dealey Plaza. President John F. Kennedy slumps in his open-top limousine. Cameras are everywhere: news crews, amateurs, bystanders, all trying to preserve a moment that will shatter the nation. And among them stands a mysterious woman wearing a trench coat and a headscarf of babushka. She's holding a camera. She's calm, focused. She seems to have the best angle in the plaza. She doesn't run. She keeps filming. But no one knows who she was. Dubbed the Babushka Lady for her Eastern European-style scarf, this woman appears in multiple frames of footage. She was right there front and center, yet she never came forward. No developed film from her camera was recovered. No reliable identity confirmed. In a world obsessed with the Zapruder film, her footage, if it exists, might show something new. Something hidden. Something too clear. Was she scared into silence? Was her film confiscated? Was she even real? Some theories go wild. CIA operative, Soviet spy, time traveler, or just someone who vanished into history, her greatest moment of clarity swallowed by shadows. And in those same shadows, years later, another killer would play games with the police and the public. His name? Zodiac. The Zodiac Killer's identity. He killed with precision and wrote with flair. The Zodiac Killer didn't just murder, he authored fear. Operating in Northern California during the late 1960s and early 70s, he claimed at least 5 confirmed victims, possibly dozens more. But it wasn't the body count that made him infamous. It was the letters, the ciphers, the smirking menace behind every envelope. He sent taunting notes to newspapers. He threatened school buses. He demanded his cryptograms be published or else. One cipher was solved decades later, revealing a jumbled message with no clear identity. Others remain unbroken. "I like killing people," he once wrote, "because it's so much fun." He signed with a symbol, a circle crossed by a vertical and horizontal linear gun sight. Hundreds of suspects have been proposed, some compelling, most circumstantial. Handwriting analysis, DNA testing, voice comparisons all have failed to yield a name that sticks. The Zodiac case has become a blueprint for unsolved terror, a mix of cruelty and performance art staged in broad daylight and sealed in shadow. And while California searched for its ciphered killer halfway around the world, a sunlit beach in Australia would soon become the scene of one of history's most chilling disappearances. 3 children, no trace, no goodbye. The disappearance of the Beaumont children. The 26th of January, 1966, Adelaide, Australia. A bright summer day. 3 siblings, Jane, Arna, and Grant Beaumont, leave for the beach. They never come home. They were seen playing, buying snacks, smiling, and then nothing. No screams, no struggle, no bodies. Just a nation that would never sleep the same way again. The Beaumont children were supposed to be safe. This was a time when kids walked to the shore, bought lunch with coins, and played for hours. But when the clock struck past due, panic set in. Police scoured the coast. Witnesses described a tall, blonde man in his 30s who'd been seen with the children. A composite sketch was made. It led nowhere. Theories multiplied. Were they taken by someone they trusted? Did they wander off? Was there a cover-up? Over the decades, leads surfaced at excavations in backyards, anonymous letters, deathbed confessions, but none brought answers. The Beaumonts became a symbol of lost innocence, the moment Australia realized monsters didn't need to hide in the dark. And just a few years later, one of the boldest criminals in American history would climb aboard a plane, hijack it mid-air, and vanish literally into thin air. The identity of D.B. Cooper. Thanksgiving Eve, 1971. A man in a dark suit and clip-on tie buys a one-way ticket from Portland to Seattle under the name Dan Cooper. He's polite, calm, orders a bourbon and soda. Mid-flight, he hands a note to a flight attendant. She thinks it's his number. It's not. "I have a bomb," it says. He shows her a briefcase filled with wires and red cylinders. The demands come next $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a refueling truck waiting on the tarmac. The plane lands, the hostages are released, the money and parachutes are delivered. Then Cooper takes off again with only a skeleton crew and his ransom in hand. Somewhere over the dense forests of Washington, he opens the rear staircase and jumps into a thunderstorm, into 200-mile winds, into legend. Despite an extensive manhunt, no confirmed trace of Cooper was ever found. In 1980, a boy discovered a rotting bundle of Cooper's ransom cash along the Columbia River. That's it. No body. No parachute. No closure. Hundreds have been suspected: Vietnam vets, ex-cons, pilots, even a transgender woman on her deathbed. None proven. D.B. Cooper didn't just commit the perfect crime, he rewrote the script. And while he vanished into the clouds, another mystery was being carved into the ground on a scale too massive to see from the ground. The origins of the Nazca Lines. High in the Peruvian desert, something impossible stretches across the sand. Massive geoglyphs some hundreds of feet long etched into the earth by hands long dead. Birds, monkeys, spiders, fish, humans, perfectly straight lines that run for miles. Spirals, trapezoids, and they've been there for over 1,000 years, mostly invisible from the ground. So who made the Nazca lines and why? Created by the Nazca culture between 500 BCE and 500 CE, the lines were made by removing the reddish topsoil to reveal the pale ground beneath, but their purpose remains a riddle. Were they astronomical markers, religious pathways, messages to the gods, landing strips for alien spacecraft? Everyone has a theory, and none quite add up. There are over 800 straight lines, 300 geometric shapes, and 70 animal figures. They could only be fully appreciated from the centuries before human flight was even a concept. That's the part that fuels obsession. Either the Nazca had a far more complex understanding of surveying and perspective than we give them credit for, or we're missing a piece of the puzzle entirely. And if ancient Peruvians were drawing lines for the sky, someone else was stacking stones for eternity in the green fields of southern England. The construction of Stonehenge. Stonehenge doesn't whisper, it looms. A circle of giants on the Salisbury Plain, built 5,000 years ago, and still refusing to explain itself. Some of its stones weigh up to 25 tons. Some were hauled over 150 miles from quarries in Wales, and no one knows exactly how they did it. This was before the wheel, before cranes, before metal tools. But somehow, they did it dragging, lifting, balancing monoliths with prehistoric precision. Was it a burial site? A calendar? A place of healing? A temple to forgotten gods? Archaeologists swing between explanations. None feel quite big enough. What survives is a structure aligned with the solstices, charged with mystery, and wrapped in centuries of superstition. Druids, pagans, tourists, and conspiracy theorists all lay claim to its magic. What truly gnaws at the edges of comprehension is the how. How did Neolithic people manage engineering feats that modern construction crews would struggle to replicate without heavy machinery? And why here, in this windswept patch of England, did they anchor their vision in stone? The same question haunts another artifact, one that fits in your hand yet seems to hold knowledge of entire continent, sketched by a man who may have seen more than he should have. The Piri race map. It's 1513. The Ottoman Empire is at its height, and an admiral named Piri Reis is sketching a world. His map, drawn on gazelle skin, is just a fragment, barely a third of the full chart, but what remains is baffling. It shows parts of Europe, Africa, South America, and something else. The coastline of what looks suspiciously like Antarctica, without ice, 300 years before it was officially discovered. The Piri race map is real. It's been authenticated. Piri himself claimed he used 20 older maps as sourcesum from Alexander the Great's era. And yet, it includes geographical details that shouldn't have been known at the time. Mountains, rivers, coastal outlines visible only from the air or uncovered land. Skeptics say it's coincidence, distortion, artistic liberty. Others insist it suggests ancient seafaring civilizations with advanced cartography. Atlantis, aliens, take your pick. Even the U.S. Air Force reportedly examined it during the Cold War. But here's the bottom line. Someone knew something. Long before satellites, before aerial surveys, before explorers ever set foot on the frozen continent, someone may have drawn what shouldn't have been visible. Which makes another stone found in the American heartland and etched with Viking runesol the more provocative. The Kensington Runestone. Minnesota, 1898. A Swedish immigrant named Olof Oman is clearing his farmland when his axe hits stone. He digs it out 30 inches tall, covered in runes. The inscription, once translated, tells a staggering story. That a group of Norse explorers reached the interior of North America in 1362, over a century before Columbus ever set sail. The Kensington Runestone claims to memorialize a journey of exploration and tragedy, complete with dates and a specific location. But from the moment it surfaced, it split the academic world. Is it a remarkable record of pre-Columbian contact or an elaborate 19th century hoax? Linguists tore it apart for inconsistencies in language. Supporters pointed to dialect variations that matched 14th century Swedish. Soil analysis placed the stone deep in the ground, untouched for centuries. Detractors countered with claims of forged carving techniques. Even today, experts can't agree. What elevates the mystery isn't just the possibility of Viking explorers in America. It's the haunting possibility that we've dismissed part of our history because it didn't fit the narrative. And just as a carved stone can upend the story of a continent, a missing man can upend the entire legal system. The disappearance of Judge Crater. The 6th of August, 1930. Joseph Force Crater, a New York Supreme Court justice, dines at a steakhouse in Manhattan. He steps outside, hails a cab, and disappears forever. No note. No confirmed sightings. No body. Just a gaping hole in the city's polished legal system and a phrase that would echo for decades, pulling a crater. Crater had just returned from a vacation in Maine. He was reportedly in good spirits, but behind the scenes, things were murky. He'd withdrawn large sums of money from his bank account, burned documents in his office, called in favors. That night, he was supposed to see a Broadway show. He never arrived. Theories are everywhere. Was he murdered by political enemies? Caught in a love triangle gone wrong? Did he flee to avoid scandal or death? His ties to Tammany Hall and shady real estate deals didn't help his reputation. Investigations lasted decades. Leads came and went. Every discovery turned out to be dust. Judge Crater became the ghost in the machine, the man who slipped through New York's cracks despite being one of its most powerful men. And the eeriest part? He wasn't the only one lost in the flames of mystery. 5 children, 1 house fire, 0 explanations. The Sodder children disappearance. It was Christmas Eve, 1945, in Fayetteville, West Virginia. The Sodder family, George, Jenny, and their 9 children, were were wrapping up festivities. By dawn, 5 of the children would be gone. The house had burned to the ground in a sudden blaze, and yet, in the smoldering ruins, no remains were ever found. No bones, no ash, nothing. Authorities called it an accident. Faulty wiring, they said, but George Sauter had recently had the electrical system inspected. It was in perfect working order. More suspicious still, the phone line was cut. A ladder, usually propped against the house, had vanished. A mysterious stranger had asked about the family weeks earlier. And the family's truck's potential escape vehicle had been mysteriously disabled. For decades, the Sauters believed the children were kidnapped in the chaos of the fire. A photo mailed anonymously in the 1960s showed a man resembling their son, Louis. "I love Brother Frankie," it read. They hired private detectives, erected a billboard. The case became their life's obsession. The Sauter home burned, but the real fire was in the unanswered question: if the children didn't die in that fire, where did they go? And what happened to 9 others who vanished not from a home, but from the frozen jaws of a Russian mountain? The Dyatlov Pass Incident. February 1959. 9 experienced hikers set out into the Ural Mountains. They never return. When rescuers find their tent, it's ripped open from the inside. The bodies are scattered. Some are barefoot in the snow, some have fractured skulls and crushed ribs. One woman is missing her tongue and eyes. Radiation is detected on their clothes, and yet no signs of a struggle. No external injuries. No logical explanation. It's called the Dyatlov Pass Incident, and it reads like the opening scene of a horror movie. The hikers were young, skilled, and organized. Their journals and photos show them smiling, laughing. Then something happened that made them flee into -30-degree weather in the dead of night. Some collapsed from hypothermia, others died violently. Theories? Plenty. Avalanche. Infrasound-induced panic. Military tests. A Yeti. Aliens. The Russian government reopened the case decades later, claiming natural causes. No one really bought it. The terrain was harsh, but not beyond their skill, and the scene was too bizarre to file under accident. Whatever happened in those snowy woods was swift, silent, and utterly terrifying. And while this mystery unfolded beneath a red sky, another has simmered in ink and speculation for centuries. Was William Shakespeare truly the bard, or just a name behind the curtain? The true identity of Shakespeare. We all know the name, William Shakespeare, the Bard of Avon, the man who invented half your favorite quotes and probably more of the English language than your high school teacher ever mentioned. But here's the thing, for someone so legendary, the historical record on Shakespeare is suspiciously thin. No manuscripts in his handwriting, sparse education, no letters, no direct evidence he ever traveled beyond England, yet he wrote vividly about Italian politics, courtly intrigue, and seafaring. Some academics shrug. Others raise eyebrows high enough to touch the ceiling of the Globe Theatre. Was Shakespeare a pseudonym? Did a nobleman like Edward de Vere, the Earl of Oxford, hide behind a common name to pen his forbidden thoughts? Was it Francis Bacon, inserting secret messages into the plays? Or Christopher Marlowe, faking his death and continuing to write? The Stratford man left behind a will carefully detailing his furniture, but never once mentioning his scripts. The man is real, the plays are real, but the authorship? That's the shadow cast across his legacy. And speaking of enigmas dropped into society with no explanazione, strange boy appeared in Germany one day, unable to speak, carrying a note, and rewriting reality itself. The mystery of Caspar Hauser. Nuremberg, 1828. A teenage boy stumbles into the city square. He can barely speak, can barely walk. He carries a letter addressed to the captain of the 4th Squadron. His name, it says, is Caspar Hauser. He claims to have grown up in a dark cell, fed only bread and water, never seeing another soul. Now, suddenly, he's free and the world has no idea what to do with him. At first, people are fascinated. Is he a feral child? A forgotten heir? A social experiment gone rogue? Kaspar's behavior is erratic but intelligent. He learns to read, to write, to draw. Then the attacks begin. He is stabbed, slashed, poisoned, always barely surviving. In 1833, he is fatally stabbed in a garden. His final words, "Man stabbed me." The killer was never caught. Some claimed he was the rightful Prince of Baden, hidden to secure a rival's throne. DNA testing in modern times neither confirms nor disproves the theory. Others say he was a compulsive liar, faking his history for attention. But if so, why was he murdered? Why did someone want him silenced? Kaspar Hauser appeared from nowhere and vanished into legend, just like another man this time, a hardened explorer who walked into the jungle and never walked back out. The disappearance of Percy Fawcett. Colonel Percy Harrison Fawcett was everything an explorer should be. Bold, eccentric, unshakably convinced of his destiny. In 1925, he ventured into the Brazilian Amazon in search of what he called the lost city of Za, mythical ancient metropolis buried beneath the jungle's green veil. He brought his son Jack and Jack's friend. Then nothing. They disappeared into the trees, and the jungle never gave them back. Fawcett's belief in Z wasn't pure fantasy. He'd seen artifacts, heard tales. He believed South America once hosted civilizations far older and more advanced than Europe had ever acknowledged. His expedition was meticulously planned until it wasn't. Months passed. Then years. Rumors swirled. Fawcett was killed by hostile tribes, died of disease, or maybe even chose to stay in a hidden city. Rescue missions followed. Many of them also disappeared. Bones were found, but never confirmed. Some tribes claimed to have seen white men in the forest, living like ghosts. Others said they were sacrificed to the gods. Fawcett's final message said simply, "You need have no fear of failure," and then silence, like a jungle swallowing a whisper. Which makes the next question all the more unsettling. What if a different man, infamous and brutal, vanished for far darker reasons? The whereabouts of Hitler's body. The 30th of April, 1945. Berlin is burning. The Allies are closing in. Adolf Hitler retreats into his Führer bunker with Eva Braun, swallows cyanide, pulls the trigger, and leaves behind a ruined world. That's the official version. But what happened next? That's where the mystery begins. Soviet troops arrived at the bunker soon after. They claimed to find charred remains, hastily burned by Hitler's staff. But when pressed for details, the story fractured. Stalin insisted Hitler had escaped. The skull fragment presented as Hitler's was later tested. Turns out, it belonged to a woman. Other remains were questionable, incomplete, or conveniently lost. For decades, rumors persisted. Hitler fled to Argentina. He died in a remote South American mansion. He underwent plastic surgery. He lived in hiding, protected by a global web of sympathizers. The CIA and FBI quietly entertained these possibilities, at least for a while. Most historians stand by the suicide story, but the gaps are real. The documentation is murky. The Soviets kept the key evidence locked away, and their stories changed with political winds. So, did history's most hated man vanish into myth? Or are we still haunted by a corpse that was never truly proven? The same question lingers over another wartime talion of teleportation, invisibility, and a ship that may have blinked out of reality itself. The Philadelphia experiment. The U.S. Navy is said to have conducted a test that would make history vanish in more ways than one. It happened allegedly in the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. A destroyer escort, the USS Eldridge, was outfitted with experimental technology designed to render it invisible to radar. The Navy called it a cloaking experiment. Conspiracy theorists called it something else entirely: teleportation, time travel, madness. According to legend, the Eldridge didn't just vanish from radar, it vanished, period. Witnesses claimed to see the ship disappear in a green haze, then reappear hundreds of miles away in Norfolk, Virginia. When it returned to Philadelphia, things were wrong. Crew members were fused into the metal hull. Others had gone insane. Some simply vanished. The Navy, of course, denies everything. Official records insist the ship was never in Philadelphia at all. But where did these stories come from? A mysterious letter, a man named Carlos Allende, a web of testimonies that sounded half true, half nightmare. No hard evidence ever emerged. Just a haunting idea that science reached too far, too fast, and glimpsed something it wasn't ready to understand. And just like this ghost ship story, another mystery clings to the walls of a prison where a high-ranking Nazi either died by his own hand or was silenced forever. The assassination of Rudolf Hess. Rudolf Hess was Hitler's right-hand man turned rogue diplomat. In 1941, he parachuted into Scotland in a bizarre solo mission to negotiate peace with the British. Instead of changing history, he was arrested and imprisoned. After the war, he became the lone inmate of Spandau prison in Berlin, a fortress kept open for just one man. In 1987, at the age of 93, Hess was found hanging from an electrical cord in a garden shed on prison grounds. The official cause: suicide. But not everyone bought it. His health was failing. His movements were closely monitored. Why, at that age, under such tight security, would he suddenly kill himself? His family claimed murder. Forensic experts pointed to inconsistencies in the strangulation marks. And if he was silenced, what was he about to say? Theories run deep. Some say he was never meant to survive the war, let alone speak freely after it. Others suggest he knew secrets that powerful nations wanted buried. Maybe his entire flight to Scotland had a hidden motive, a second front of negotiation or betrayal, long suppressed. And while Hess Theodore was silenced in a lonely cell, another silent killer choked an entire city, leaving behind a fog thick with questions and death. The Great Smog of London's long-term effects. December 1952. A thick, yellow-brown fog blankets London. At first, people think it's the usual Super London's infamous blend of coal smoke and damp air. But this time, it doesn't lift. It gets thicker, denser. By the end of the week, thousands are dead. The Great Smog of London killed at least 4,000 people, possibly over 12,000, and hospitalized tens of thousands more. People coughed up black mucus. Visibility dropped to inches. Buses crashed. Pedestrians walked into the Thames. Cattle suffocated in the fields. The city became a gas chamber, and no one saw it coming. The immediate effects were devastating, but the long-term consequences were even more insidious. Respiratory illness rates spiked for years. Infant mortality increased. The smog exposed just how deadly industrial pollution could be, forcing governments to rethink air quality policy. But even today, no one fully knows how deep the damage ran. How many chronic illnesses, cancer cases, and genetic impacts trace back to that week of poison in the air? It was a man-made disaster. Unintentional yet catastrophic, an invisible killer made visible. And lurking behind another monument of human engineering stands a question just as unsettling. Was the Great Pyramid really just a tomb, or something far more complex? The purpose of the Great Pyramid of Giza. It's the oldest of the 7 wonders of the ancient world and the only one still standing. The Great Pyramid of Giza is a 4,500-year-old enigma made of over 2 million limestone blocks, each weighing tons. It's aligned almost perfectly to true north. Its base is nearly a perfect square. Its proportions match pi and the golden ratio. And yet, we're still not entirely sure what it was for. The mainstream view is simple. It's a tomb, built for Pharaoh Khufu, a monument to his godlike reign. But here's the catch. No mummy was ever found inside. No sarcophagus in the burial chamber. No hieroglyphic inscriptions saying, "Here lies Khufu." Just empty chambers, steep corridors, and dead-end shafts. Alternative theories abound. Some say it was an energy plant, a geodetic marker, or even a machine of lost technology. The Great Pyramid has inspired everything from fringe science to sacred geometry, and it's easy to see why. It's not just a big pile of stone sits precision, carved in a time when copper chisels were the best tools available. Whatever its true purpose, it wasn't built by accident or on a whim. And just like that stone leviathan in the desert, entire cities have vanished without clear reason like the ones left behind by the Maya. The sudden collapse of the Maya civilization. For over 1,000 years, the Maya flourished across modern-day Mexico, Guatemala, and Belize. They built vast cities, towering pyramids, and advanced astronomical observatories. They developed a written language, a complex calendar, and a mathematical system that rivaled anything in Europe at the time. Then, around 900 CE, something happened. The cities emptied. The temples fell silent. Stone carvings stopped. The Maya civilization collapsed abruptly, mysteriously, and almost simultaneously across the region. What went wrong? Theories swirl like jungle mist. Environmental degradation, prolonged drought, overpopulation, warfare. Some say the Maya overfarmed their land. Others point to internal revolt. Still others believe a spiritual upheaval or cosmic prophecy played a role. But there's no single smoking gun, just a series of silent ruins reclaimed by vines and moss. What's stranger is that the Maya didn't disappear entirely. Their descendants still live throughout Central America. It was the political and cultural structure that crumbled, not the people. A great empire fell without a final battle, without a conqueror, without a defining moment. And as archaeologists try to piece together their silent collapse, another artifact of ancient faith continues to elude. Discovery 1 said to hold unspeakable power, lost somewhere between legend and fate. The fate of the Ark of the Covenant. It's the most sacred object in Judeo-Christian lore. A gold-covered chest, crafted to hold the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments, said to be built by Moses himself under divine instruction. The Ark of the Covenant wasn't just a container, it was a weapon of God. It toppled walls, struck down armies, and radiated power. Then it vanished. The Bible trails the Ark through centuries of battles, processions, and holy wars. It was last seen in the Temple of Solomon until that too was destroyed. Since then, its location has been the stuff of myth, obsession, and blockbuster fiction. Some believe it was hidden beneath Jerusalem, waiting to be revealed. Others claim it was smuggled to Ethiopia, where monks still guard a sealed sanctuary said to contain the Ark, though no one's allowed inside. Others point to it being taken to Egypt, destroyed in Babylonian conquest, or even secreted away by the Knights Templar. No proof, no fragments, no definitive clue. But what makes the Ark so magnetic isn't just the mystery, it's what it represents. Power wrapped in gold, divinity you can carry. And like all holy relics, it casts a long shadow, especially over those still searching for the queen who held an empire in the palm of her hand. The whereabouts of Cleopatra's tomb. She was the last pharaoh of Egypt, the queen who defied Rome, lover to both Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, and a woman whose myth has outlived every empire. Cleopatra VII's life is chronicled in the scrolls of history, her charisma preserved through the pens of poets and conquerors alike. But her final resting place? That's one of antiquity's greatest unsolved riddles. The last historical accounts suggest she died by suicide in 30 BCE, after the fall of Alexandria and Antony's defeat. The classical sources claim that she and Antony were buried together in a splendid and regal fashion, somewhere in Egypt. But where? No tomb has ever been found. No sarcophagus, no royal seal, nothing. Archaeologists have scoured Alexandria, now mostly underwater. Others believe her tomb might lie beneath the temple of Taposiris Magna, west of the city. Excavations have unearthed artifacts, statues, and even mummies, but no conclusive link to Cleopatra herself. Some suggest her burial site was destroyed or looted, erased from history by those who feared her legacy. And yet, the mystery persists. Because this isn't just about a grave, it's about the death of an era, the final punctuation mark on the story of ancient Egypt. And the same question applies to another tale of war and legend. Did the Trojan War ever really happen? The true story of the Trojan War. A beautiful woman stolen, 1,000 ships launched, a city burned to the ground by gods and men. The Trojan War is the stuff of epic poetry, mainly Homer's Iliad, a foundational text for Western civilization. But strip away the bronze armor and divine meddling, and a bigger question remains. Was it myth or history? For centuries, scholars believed the war was pure fiction, Greek propaganda stitched together by bards. Then, in the late 19th century, amateur archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann claimed to discover the ruins of Troy in modern-day Turkey. Layers of cities piled on top of each other, one of them bearing signs of catastrophic destruction. Suddenly, Homer's world didn't seem so fictional. But was this the Troy? Was there really a war? If so, it probably wasn't about Helen. It was likely over trade routes, power, and politics. Achilles, Hector, and the Trojan horse may be storytelling flourishes added later, but evidence of warfare, burnt walls, and skeletal trauma suggests something real did happen. The boundary between legend and fact is blurry, and the same fog shrouds the origins of a language so isolated, so unlike any other, it may as well have come from another dimension entirely. The origins of the Basque language. Nestled in the Western Pyrenees between Spain and France, the Basque people speak a language that is truly alone. Euskara, the Basque language, shares no roots with any other tongue in Europe or anywhere else in the world. It isn't Indo-European, it isn't Latin-based. It isn't related to Celtic, Slavic, or Germanic languages. It is a linguistic orphan. This has baffled historians and linguists for centuries. How can a language be so utterly unique and still survive into the modern age? Theories abound. Some believe it predates the arrival of Indo-Europeans and is the last remnant of Europe's Stone Age languages. Others think it may have ties to ancient Caucasian dialects or even long-lost seafaring cultures. Genetic studies show that the Basque people also have distinct DNA markers, further deepening the mystery. They are not aliens, but their lineage and language hint at a cultural continuity stretching back further than almost any other group in Europe. Euskara has weathered invasions, empires, and enforced assimilation. And it's still spoken today, an unbroken thread to a past we barely understand. Just like the artifact found rusting beneath the sea that some believe was the world's first computer, the Antikythera mechanism's exact purpose. In 1901, off the coast of the Greek island Antikythera, divers searching for treasure stumbled upon something far stranger than gold, a corroded lump of bronze gears fused into a mass of stone. It didn't look like much, but X-rays later revealed something shocking. Inside was an ancient machine gears, dials, inscriptions, not art, not myth, technology. From the 1st or 2nd century BCE, the Antikythera mechanism defies everything we thought we knew about ancient engineering. It's a hand-cranked device made of over 30 bronze gears, capable of tracking lunar phases, solar eclipses, planetary positions, and even the timing of Olympic Games. It's essentially an analog computer from over 2,000 years ago. Who made it? For what purpose? Was it an elite teaching tool? A sailor's navigation system? A temple instrument to predict celestial events? We still don't know. What we do know is that nothing like it appeared again for over 1,000 years. It vanished from history as suddenly as it emerged. One mechanism, One mystery. And now it sits behind museum glass, a clockwork echo of a forgotten genius. And while this machine may hold the heavens in its gears, another mystery lies behind a Masca prisoner, unnamed, unseen, and legendary. The identity of the Man in the Iron Mask. France, late 1600s. Deep within the Bastille and other state prisons, a man is held under extraordinary secrecy. He is always masked, his face never seen, his name never spoken. Even in death, his identity is erased. History records him only as the Man in the Iron Mask. Voltaire claimed he was a royal twin, hidden to protect the crown. Alexandre Dumas made him a tragic hero in one of his most famous novels. But who was he, really? Was he someone too dangerous to be known? A disgraced nobleman? A political liability? An illegitimate child of royalty? Some documents suggest he was a valet named Eustache Dauger, perhaps involved in high-level secrets or court scandals. Others argue the records were manipulated to obscure the truth. Even the Iron Mask may have been a myth. Contemporary records refer to black velvet. But the mystery remains. Why such secrecy for one man? The effort to conceal him was immense. Guards were executed for speaking his name. He was transferred between prisons with precision and covered faces. Whoever he was, he terrified someone powerful. And just like the missing chapters of his life, another absence would leave historians grasping the missing pages of a famous mutiny. The disappearance of Captain Bligh's logbook. In 1789, the HMS Bounty sailed into legend when Fletcher Christian led a mutiny against Captain William Bligh. The crew cast Bligh and 18 loyalists adrift in a small boat in the South Pacific. Bligh, defiant and unbreakable, navigated over 3,600 miles to safety, one of the greatest feats of open-sea navigation ever recorded. He returned to England, a hero and a target. Bligh was meticulous. He kept detailed logs every course, every insult, every accusation. But when his complete logbook vanished, so did parts of the story. We know fragments. We have reports. But the full narrative, the unfiltered account, has never resurfaced. Was it lost? Destroyed? Suppressed? The missing log fueled speculation for centuries. Was Bligh more brutal than history admits? Did he manipulate the record before presenting it to authorities? Or did the mutineers themselves find and erase part of the past to protect their names? The Bounty's story is one of loyalty, betrayal, and survival. But without that log, one voice is forever incomplete. A captain's pen, silenced. And while the pages are lost to time, another royal mystery was just beginning, one involving a young girl, an execution, and whispers of an escape. The fate of Anastasia Romanov. July 1918. The Romanov family, Russia's last imperial dynasty, was executed in the basement of a house in Yekaterinburg. Bullets, bayonets, and fire ended 3 centuries of Tsarist rule. But in the aftermath, chaos, confusion, and the spark of a legend. One daughter may have survived. Anastasia. Rumors erupted almost immediately. A missing body, a young girl fleeing through the Russian wilderness. Survivors swore they saw her. Imposters emerged. The most famous, Anna Anderson, claimed for decades to be the lost Grand Duchess. She had scars. She had memories. She even convinced members of the Romanovs' extended family. But she was never definitively proven. In 1991, the supposed remains of the Romanovs were exhumed. All but 2 children were accounted for. Later, another grave was found. DNA testing confirmed identities, but doubts lingered. Were the remains swapped? Were the tests manipulated? Did a broken empire leave behind a royal ghost? Anastasia became more than a mystery. She became a symbol of survival, of defiance, of the idea that history might sometimes spare the innocent. And just like a ballroom that echoes without music, Her story dances between fact and fairy tale. And while she may have slipped through the cracks of revolution, another story took a darker, stranger turn on where the dance never stopped. The mystery of the dancing plague of 1518. Strasbourg, July 1518. A woman named Frau Trophia steps into the street and begins to dance. She doesn't stop. Hours pass, then days. Within a week, dozens have joined her. Men, women, children spinning, stomping, collapsing. Some laugh, some cry, some drop dead. From exhaustion, from heart failure, from the sheer impossibility of it all. It becomes an epidemic. City leaders consult doctors, not priests. Too much hot blood, they say. The solution? More dancing. Musicians are hired. A stage is built. The madness intensifies. By the time it ends, over 400 people have danced, and dozens have died. What caused it? Theories range from mass hysteria to ergot poisoning a hallucinogenic mold on bread. Others believe it was a psychic event, triggered by trauma, starvation, or religious fervor. But no theory fully explains the scale or duration. The plague faded without explanation. No one was punished. No one remembered it until centuries later. It's one of history's strangest footnotes where the body rebelled and the mind followed, a dance of death with no partner. And just like those dancers, another group of settlers stepped into a new world and simply vanished, leaving behind only whispers and carved clues in the wilderness. The disappearance of the Jamestown settlers. Before there was Plymouth, before there was Thanksgiving, there was Jamestown. Established in 1607, it was England's first permanent colony in America. But its early years were soaked in blood, starvation, and desperate survival. The winter of 1609, the starving time reduced settlers to eating leather, rats, even the dead. But it wasn't just hunger that haunted Jamestown, it was disappearance. A lesser-known mystery surrounds a group of settlers sent to establish outposts and never heard from again. Unlike the more famous Roanoke colony, Jamestown was thoroughly documented, which makes its holes more disturbing. Letters speak of vanished parties. Patrols sent out that never returned. Evidence of native attacks? Yes, but not always. Sometimes they just disappeared. Later reports described English artifacts found deep inland in tribal villages, European surnames appearing generations later among native people. Was there integration, abduction, escape? Or something stranger like rogue settlements that severed contact with the colony to survive? Jamestown survived, barely, but the story we tell is incomplete because not everyone who came to the New World stayed part of its official narrative. And just like the mysteries buried in colonial soil, strange lines etched into desert rock tell a story even satellites struggle to decipher. The purpose of the Nazca Line's animal figures. Sprawled across the arid plains of southern Peru, the Nazca Lines stretch like prehistoric etchings from the hand of a forgotten god. Among them are massive animal figures. A hummingbird with a beak the length of a football field, a monkey with a spiral tail, a spider with impossibly long limbs, each one so large it can only be fully appreciated from the air. But the question is, why? Created between 500 BCE and 500 CE by the Nazca people, these figures were made by removing the dark surface rocks to reveal lighter soil beneath. The straight lines could be interpreted as paths or astronomical alignments, but the animals, they're more cryptic. Some researchers suggest the figures held religious or ceremonial significance, possibly representing deities or totems. Others believe they formed part of a vast ritual calendar, signaling when and where to summon rain, gods, or both. A few say they were messages to the heavens' visual prayers to skybound forces. And yes, the alien theories persist. though evidence remains speculative at best. Why these specific animals? Why such precision? Why in such an inhospitable place? Every answer leads to another question, like a puzzle meant to be unsolved. And just as these carvings hint at what ancient people revered, another site holds a library that once housed the knowledge of entire civilizations before it vanished in smoke and silence. The fate of the Library of Alexandria. It was the beating heart of ancient intellect. The Library of Alexandria, founded in Egypt in the 3rd century BCE, was a sanctuary for knowledge, ambition, and wonder. Scrolls filled its halls. Ideas danced between cultures. It was said to hold hundreds of thousands of texts, from science to philosophy, medicine to magic. And then, it was gone. No one knows exactly how the library was destroyed. Some blame Julius Caesar's fire during his siege of the city. Others point to Christian zealots, Islamic conquest, or even internal neglect. The truth? It might have died by degrees burned, looted, forgotten over centuries of shifting empires. But what was lost is staggering. Writings by Socrates, entire plays by Euripides, treatises on astronomy and medicine that could have leapfrogged humanity by centuries. Gone, vanished into ash and legend. The library became a symbol not just of what was, but of what could have been. Was there a master catalog? A secret archive? A final copy buried deep in a tomb or cave? No one knows. And while the library's ashes may have drifted out to sea, another monument nearby has stood firm for millennia, half lion, half man, staring silently across the desert with secrets of its own. The true purpose of the Sphinx. It's older than most of recorded history. The Great Sphinx of Giza, 240 feet long, 66 feet high, carved from a single mass of limestone, has stood watch over the Egyptian desert for over 4,500 years. But who built it? Why? And what was its original purpose? Traditional archaeology claims it was constructed during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, around 2,500 BCE, serving as a spiritual guardian of the pyramids. But the Sphinx tells a stranger tale. Its body is disproportionately eroded, some argue, not by wind and sand, but by water, heavy, sustained water, which would date the monument to a time when Egypt was lush thousands of years earlier than currently believed. Some theorists suggest it predates Egyptian civilization entirely, that it may be a remnant of a lost culture, recarved and repurposed by later dynasties. Others point to astronomical alignments, suggesting it once stared directly at the constellation Leo during the vernal equinox, hinting at a celestial function. The face appears recarved, the body out of sync. Chambers may lie beneath its paws. Whether tomb, temple, or time capsule, the Sphinx remains a riddle in stone, its silence more deafening than 1,000 scrolls burned. And from this monument to the ancient past, our next mystery plunges into the mythic, an entire island that supposedly sank beneath the sea. The existence of Atlantis. It's the most famous city that never was, or maybe still is. Atlantis, the legendary island described by Plato around 360 BCE, was said to be a naval power located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, a utopia of unmatched wealth, technology, and wisdom. And then, in a single day and night, it sank into the sea, swallowed by the gods or nature, depending on who's telling the story. Plato called it a Periblean allegory about the dangers of hubris and moral decay. But he also gave detailed descriptions: concentric rings of land and water, a bustling city at its core, lush landscapes, advanced infrastructure. For centuries, people have taken his words literally. Searchers have looked in the Mediterranean, the Atlantic, even Antarctica. Some theories link Atlantis to the Minoan civilization wiped out by volcanic eruptions and tsunamis. Others say it was a real culture distorted by time and storytelling. And some, of course, claim aliens, stargates, and lost technologies far beyond what we understand. The allure of Atlantis lies in the idea that an entire civilization, sophisticated, elegant, arrogant, could vanish completely. And if it happened once, could it happen again? But Atlantis wasn't the only golden ghost of the past. Another city of riches once drew men into madness, El Dorado. The location of El Dorado. In the 16th century, conquistadors heard whispers in the jungle, tales of a city made not just of gold, but with gold in its very soul, streets paved with it, walls gleaming with it. A king who bathed in powdered gold before diving into a sacred lake. They called it El Doradothi Gilded Onan. They went mad trying to find it. At first, El Dorado was a person, then a city, then an empire. But no matter the form, the promise remained the same. Wealth beyond imagination, hidden deep within South America. Spanish explorers died by the hundreds in the Amazon's heat, lured by stories told by indigenous guides, some truthful, some fed to invaders to keep them wandering in circles. Despite the endless failure, expeditions continued. Some believe El Dorado was inspired by the Muisca people of Colombia, whose rituals involved gold offerings to the gods. Others suggest the city never existed. It was greed, given form, a collective hallucination of conquest. But artifacts have been found: gold figures, sacred lakes, traces of lost civilizations beneath jungle canopies. So maybe El Dorado wasn't a place, but a constellation of them cities, lost to time and ambition. And speaking of strange losses, the next tale dances out of folklore and into eerie possibility: a piper, a flute, and an entire generation of children who followed him into silence. The mystery of the Pied Piper of Hamelin. It begins with a tune and ends in a void. The story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin is one of the darkest children's tales in European folklore. In 1284, the legend says, a brightly dressed piper arrived in the German town of Hamelin. Hired to drive away a plague of rats, he played his magical peepee and the vermin fled. But when the town refused to pay him, the piper returned. This time, he played for the children. 130 vanished, never to return. It sounds like a fairy tale. And yet, a stained glass window once stood in Hamelin commemorating the event. Town records mention a calamity around that time. So what really happened? Historians have speculated. Mass migration? A children's crusade? A fatal epidemic? Some say that children were recruited or forced into colonizing distant lands. Others think the tale was used to explain grief or warn against betrayal. What makes the story endure isn't just the loss, but the precision: a date, a number, a single man, never caught, never named, who walked through a town's heart with a pipe and left it empty. And just as his song lured away the innocent, another nameless man washed ashore decades later with no identity, no wounds, and a mystery tucked in his pocket: the identity of the Taman Shudman. The 1st of December, 1948, Somerton Beach, Australia. A man is found dead on the sand, slumped neatly against a seawall. Well dressed in a suit, no wallet, no ID, no labels on his clothing. Cause of death? Unknown. No signs of violence, no clear poison. He simply stopped being alive. But what made this mystery metastasize into obsession was what came next. In a secret pocket sewn into his waistband, authorities discovered a scrap of paper with 2 words: Tamam Shud, Persian meaning ended or finished. The phrase appears in the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a book of philosophical poetry. Police found a copy of that very book tossed in the back seat of an abandoned car nearby, containing a code scribbled in the back and a phone number. The code? Still unsolved. The phone number? Led to a nurse who claimed not to know him, but her reaction suggested otherwise. Some say he was a Cold War spy. Others think he was a jilted lover, a drifter, or a man who wanted to disappear in the most poetic way possible. But no country claimed him. No family came forward. No name, no past. Just a dead man with a message that means the end. And yet, in another tale of ocean disappearance, it wasn't one man who vanished, but an entire ship and everyone aboard. The disappearance of the USS Cyclops. March 1918. The USS Cyclops, a massive U.S. Navy collier, departs Barbados with 306 people on board and a full cargo of manganese ore. Destination: Baltimore. It never arrives. No SOS, no wreckage, no survivors, just gone. It remains the single largest non-combat loss of life in U.S. Navy history. The ship was built like a floating fortress, nearly 550 feet long, with a solid record of service. But as it steamed through the Bermuda Triangle, it was swallowed without a trace. Some speculate structural failure due to overloading. Others point to sabotage, perhaps by a German spy on board, given the wartime climate. And of course, there's the usual mention of supernatural forces. The Bermuda Triangle has that effect. What truly confounds investigators is the silence. A ship of that size doesn't just vanish. No debris, no oil slick, no lifeboats. Other ships in the same area reported nothing unusual. Weather was calm. Radio conditions were good. And then nothing. Theories abound, but no proof has surfaced. It's as if the ocean made a decision and kept it secret. And while that ship may lie somewhere deep beneath the Atlantic, another crash this one airborne would ignite decades of conspiracy, cover-ups, and extraterrestrial whispers. The Roswell Incident. July 1947. A rancher near Roswell, New Mexico, finds strange debris scattered across his land. Metallic, foil-like, impossibly light. The U.S. Army issues a press release. They've recovered a flying disc. Then, less than 24 hours later, they retract the statement. It was just a weather balloon, they say. Nothing to see here. But the genie was out of the bottle. The Roswell incident has become the godfather of UFO lore. Witnesses claim to see alien bodies recovered. Military trucks rushed in. Civilians were silenced. The wreckage was taken to an Air Force base, never seen again. Decades later, the government changed its story again, admitting it was part of Project Mogul secret surveillance using high-altitude balloons. But by then, the legend had mutated. Books, documentaries, whistleblower Saul insisted something more had happened. That the U.S. had retrieved alien technology, that autopsies were conducted, that the truth was buried deeper than the wreckage itself. Roswell became a metaphor for secrecy in the atomic age. Not just what crashed, but what was kept from us. A riddle in tinfoil. And not far from fiction, another beast once roamed the hills of rural Francerial, or imagined it left behind blood, bones, and a name that still growls in legend. The identity of the beast of Gévaudan. Between 1764 and 1767, the French province of Gévaudan was gripped by terror. A monstrous creature larger than a wolf, faster than a horse, seemingly immune to bullets, was attacking with horrifying frequency. It targeted women and children. It tore throats, devoured faces, left corpses mutilated in ways no known animal could replicate. The locals called it simply the beast. Over 100 people were killed, many more wounded. Panic spread across France. King Louis XV sent hunters, soldiers, even professional wolf killers. All failed. Some claimed the beast was accompanied by a smaller wolf. Others said it wore armor. Theories ranged from a rogue lion or hyena to a trained war beast released by a sadist. Eventually, a local hunter named Jean Chastel reportedly shot the creature with a blessed silver bullet. Yes, really. Afterward, the attacks ceased. The carcass was paraded, but its body mysteriously vanished en route to Paris. So no official autopsy, no species confirmed, just conflicting reports and a swelling body count. Was it one beast? Several? Something trained to kill? Whatever it was, it moved like a ghost and killed like a machine. And just as Chilingzo, too, was the single word left behind by an entire vanished colony, Croatoan. The mystery of the lost colony of Croatan. Roanoke Island, late 1580s. Over 100 English settlers vanish without a trace. They were meant to be the first permanent colony in the New World. When Governor John White returned from England after a supply run in 1590, he found their camp deserted, houses dismantled, no bodies, no signs of struggle. Just one word carved into a post. Croatoan. There was no cross or distress signal, as White had instructed, just that single word. Croatoan was the name of a nearby island modern-day Hatteras, of the friendly indigenous people who lived there. Did the colonists integrate with them? Were they absorbed or slaughtered? Despite decades of searching, no definitive answers have surfaced. Some artifacts suggest English presence inland, but nothing proves survival. Later reports claim to see fair-skinned, blue-eyed children in native tribes. Was it intermarriage or myth? Other theories suggest they fled inland, succumbed to disease, or starved in silence. The lost colony became America's first great, unsolved mystery. A settlement swallowed whole by forest, weather, and time. And it left behind only a word question carved into wood. And from human conspirators to ancient civilizations, another murder would soon change the course of history, raising the question: were the true plotters ever caught? The assassination of Lincoln's true conspirators. The 14th of April, 1865. Abraham Lincoln is shot in the back of the head while watching a play at Ford's Theater. The assassin, John Wilkes Booth. But Booth wasn't acting alone. He was part of a broader conspiracy that aimed to decapitate the U.S. government. Vice President Andrew Johnson and Secretary of State William Seward were also targets that night. Booth was killed days later. His main accomplices, Lewis Powell, David Harold, George Atzerodt, and Mary Surratt, were arrested, tried, and hanged. Case closed, right? Not quite. Whispers of deeper involvement have lingered ever since. Some believe Confederate leaders knew and approved of the plan. Others say it stretched beyond Southern sympathizers, possibly implicating Union insiders. Why wasn't Andrew Johnson attacked, despite being targeted? Why did Booth have so many escape routes pre-planned? Why did key testimony go missing? Even Booth's death is questioned. Some claim the man shot in the barn was not Booth at all, and that he escaped under an alias. A sealed diary, redacted documents, and unexamined evidence continue to stir doubt. Lincoln's death wasn't just a national tragedy, was a historical fracture, and like any good conspiracy, its shadows stretch long. Just as long as the mystery of a civilization whose origins remain buried beneath layers of obsidian heads and jungle soil. The origins of the Olmec civilization. Before the Maya, before the Aztecs, there were the Olmecs. Flourishing from around 1,600 to 400 BCE, along the Gulf Coast of modern-day Mexico, this ancient civilization left behind massive stone heads, intricate art, and stunning evidence of early complex society. But for all they built, the Olmecs left behind no decipherable texts, no clear origin myth, and no final chapter. Where did they come from? Who influenced them, or did they influence everyone else? Their colossal basalt heads, some weighing over 40 tons, have been interpreted in wildly different ways. Were they kings, warriors, gods? Some argue their facial features suggest African ancestry, leading to controversial theories of pre-Columbian transoceanic contact. Mainstream archaeologists reject that, pointing instead to indigenous roots. But even within that framework, questions remain. They practiced advanced agriculture, built ceremonial centers, and created a calendar system, but much of their infrastructure has been swallowed by time and tropical decay. They are called the mother culture of Mesoamerica, yet the extent of their influence remains murky. Did they birth the region's complex societies, or merely overlap with them? The Olmecs vanish around 400 BCE, leaving only scattered ruins and heads staring blankly into the future. And speaking of vanishing acts, our next mystery sank in Arctic ice, taking 129 men and 2 ships down with it. The disappearance of the Franklin expedition. Sir John Franklin leads 2 ships, the HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, on a mission to chart the elusive Northwest Passage through the Canadian Arctic. The ships are state-of-the-art, packed with supplies to last years. The crew, 129 seasoned British sailors, they never return. For decades, their fate was unknown. Search parties found eerie traces, a note left in a cairn, abandoned camps, human remains. Some skeletons showed signs of scurvy. Others suggested something darker, cut marks on bones, implying cannibalism. Equipment was found miles from where it should have been. One ship was reportedly seen drifting, ghost-like, through icy waters. Then silence. Modern expeditions finally found the Erebus and Terror in the 2010s, eerily well preserved on the seafloor. But questions remain. What caused the collapse? Was it lead poisoning from canned food? Starvation? Exposure? Mutiny? The Franklin expedition became a Victorian nightmare, a cautionary tale of hubris, ice, and isolation. And even now, its frozen remains refuse to yield every truth. And if Franklin's crew met their doom in ice and desperation, another party in the American frontier faced starvation, snow, and a choice that still haunts the national conscience: eat or die. The fate of the Donner Party's missing members. In 1846, nearly 90 pioneers left Illinois for California, chasing the dream of westward expansion. Among them was the Donner family. But instead of opportunity, they found one of the most harrowing survival stories in American history. Snowbound in the Sierra Nevada, trapped by early storms, they ran out of food. Livestock died. Supplies froze, and one by one, people began to disappear. When rescuers arrived months later, they found a hellscape. Makeshift shelters littered with bones, human bones. Many had died. Some had lived, but the cost was unthinkable. Cannibalism wasn't speculation, it was survival. The forlorn hope, a splinter group of 17 who set out on foot for help, resorted to eating the dead. Only 7 made it. Those left behind fared no better. But even now, not every fate is known. Some members vanished en route. Others may have split off, never to be seen again. Bones discovered decades later were buried quickly, quietly. Did every account get told? Did some cover the worst to protect families? The Donner Party has become shorthand for desperation, but it's also a warning. The line between civilization and savagery is thinner than we'd like to admit. And next, we revisit the man found dead by the sea again, only this time with a different name. The identity of the Somerton Man. Yes, we've been here before, but now the lens sharpens. The Somerton Man, also known as the Taman Shud Man, is one of history's most haunting cases of vanished identity. But why repeat it under a second name? Because every time this case is re-examined, it splits into new layers, like a crime novel with no last page. Found dead on Somerton Beach in 1948, the man wore a clean suit, had no ID, and showed no external injuries. Hidden in a secret pocket was a scrap of paper reading Tamam Shud, meaning ended. From there, the breadcrumbs only led into thicker fog. A copy of the Rubaiyat with a code scrawled inside, a link to a local nurse, and a whispered connection to Cold War espionage. But this isn't just a spy mystery. It's a riddle about memory and erasure. Who erases themselves so cleanly? Who dies with no past, no dental records, no missing person match, no one claiming the body? Some think he was an agent, others say a suicidal lover. A few think he was both. Despite modern forensic attempts, his true name and why he died so quietly remains unsolved. And just as this man left behind a cryptic message, another culture left behind monolithic statues, giants with no known purpose, staring across a lost island. The purpose of the Moai statues on Easter Island. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, is one of the most isolated inhabited islands on Earth, over 2,000 miles from the nearest continental shore. And yet, across this lonely land stand nearly 900 Moai, colossal stone statues carved with elongated faces, heavy brows, and solemn expressions. Some tower over 30 feet high. Most face inland, watching the island. But why were they built? And how? The traditional belief is that the Moai represented deified ancestors, that they were raised by Polynesian settlers between 1250 and 1500 CE as guardians or spiritual mediators. But then comes the engineering mystery. These statues weigh tons. The quarries are far from many of their final locations. How did a people without wheels, cranes, or metal tools move them? Some say they walked, the statuettes rocking them side to side using ropes. Others believe a complex system of log rollers and sleds. But the deeper question persists. Why invest so much into these silent monoliths? The society that built them collapsed, partly due to deforestation, overpopulation, or internal conflict. The Moai were toppled, forgotten. But they remain massive faces watching an island that forgot how to sustain itself. And just like Rapa Nui faded into near ruin, so too did another great civilization, this one vast, ancient, and mysteriously extinguished. The cause of the sudden decline of the Indus Valley Civilization. The Indus Valley Civilization once sprawled across present-day Pakistan and northwest India, flourishing around 1300 BCE. It boasted advanced urban planning, sewage systems, standardized weights, and peaceful cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. At its peak, it rivaled Mesopotamia and Egypt in complexity. And then sudden silence. The cities were abandoned. The writing system, still undeciphered, stopped appearing. Trade networks collapsed. The people didn't migrate. They vanished. Why? Some blame climate change, shifting monsoons, rivers drying up, floods ruining agriculture. Others argue for a slow erosion of resources, weakening the urban centers. There are theories of an Indo-Aryan invasion, but archaeological evidence is thin. Disease? Economic collapse? A breakdown of trade with Mesopotamia? All possibilities. The eerie part? There's no definitive fall. No signs of mass violence. No apocalyptic event. Just gradual abandonment. And what's left behind is a whisper, a ghost grid of cities once teeming with life, now covered in dust and uncertainty. Their language unread, their beliefs unknown. And in that same unknowable wilderness, another man would chase myth into the jungle, vanishing just as the lost city he sought always had. The location of the lost city of Z. Colonel Percy Fawcett wasn't chasing fantasy, he was chasing evidence. He believed that deep within the Brazilian Amazon, ruins of a lost, advanced civilization were waiting to be discovered. He called it the City of Z. Not gold, not jewels knowledge. Carved stone, temples, a complex society buried in the jungle like a seed waiting for light. In 1925, Fawcett set off with his son Jack and Jack's friend Raleigh Rimmel. They were last seen crossing the upper Xingu River. Then nothing. No bodies, no camp, no final message. Just silence. Search parties followed, some never returned. Tribes spoke of white men passing through, some claimed they'd been killed, others said they'd stayed. What was Z? Was it a Mesoamerican-style city-state that predated European arrival? Some modern archaeologists believe large populations once lived in what was assumed to be empty jungle, now backed by satellite evidence of ancient earthworks and settlements. Fawcett may have been right, but he didn't live to see it proven. To this day, the jungle keeps its secrets. Z could be real, or a mirage conjured by obsession, but Fawcett's disappearance became as legendary as the city itself. And while that mystery is shrouded in trees, the next is submerged beneath the sea, another vessel lost, only to be found a century later in eerie silence. The disappearance of the H.L. Hunley. The 17th of February, 1864. In the thick of the American Civil War, the Confederate submarine H.L. Hunley set out on a mission that would change naval warfare. It became the first combat submarine to sink an enemy ship, the USS Housatonicoff, the coast of Charleston, South Carolina. But moments after its historic strike, the Hunley vanished, taking all 8 crewmen with it. For over 130 years, the Hunley's fate was a ghost story. Then in 1995, it was discovered buried in silt on the ocean floor, remarkably intact. Raised in 2000, the vessel revealed clues but no clear answers. There was no obvious damage. The crew were found still seated at their stations, as if frozen mid-task. Theories abound. A shockwave from the explosion knocked them unconscious. A failure in the air supply? Mechanical issues? Or perhaps the sub was simply a death trap, its victory a fatal triumph. The Hunley was a marvel of its time, a hand-cranked metal tube, packed with human ambition and claustrophobic dread. It succeeded, and then was swallowed whole by the sea. And from one unsolved disappearance to a story out of medieval England where 2 children appeared from nowhere, speaking no known tongue and tinted a shade of green. The mystery of the green children of Woolpit. 12th century Suffolk, England. In the village of Woolpit, farmers stumbled upon 2 children, brother and sister, emerging from a wolf trap. They wore strange clothes, spoke an unknown language, and most bizarre of all, their skin was green. Not ill, not pale green. They were taken in. The boy died shortly after, but the girl survived. Eventually, her skin returned to normal. She learned English, adopted local customs, and offered only fragments of explanation. She said they came from a place called St. Martin's Land, where the sun never fully shone and everything was twilight. One day, while tending their father's cattle, they heard a bell, entered a cave, and emerged in Woolpit. That's the story, recorded by 2 chroniclers, both decades after the event. Skeptics claim it was a case of foreign children suffering from malnutrition, hence the greenish skin. Others say it was legend woven from misunderstanding. But what of the language? The clothes? The cave? The tale of the green children defies easy explanation. A folk tale? A true anomaly? A metaphor for integration or alienness? Either way, it's a reminder that some visitors don't need spaceships to seem otherworldly. The true story of the Salem witch trials. In 1692, a small Puritan village in Massachusetts descended into chaos. What began with the strange behavior of 2 young girls' fits, contortions, screaming, soon spiraled into one of the darkest chapters in early American history. Over the course of a year, more than 200 people were accused of witchcraft. 19 were hanged. 1 was pressed to death under heavy stones. All because of fear, superstition, and something still not fully understood. Why Salem? Why then? Some historians blame mass hysteria. Others point to toxic rye infected with ergot, a hallucinogen. Still others focus on socio-political tensions, land disputes, religious extremism, and old grudges in a repressive, paranoid society. The accusers were mostly young girls. Their testimonies were erratic, dramatic, and nearly impossible to challenge. Spectral evidence claims of being tormented by the spirit of a person was enough to condemn someone. Confessing sometimes saved your life. Denial could kill you. Even centuries later, the Salem witch trials remain a cautionary tale of mass panic and scapegoating. But deeper mysteries persist. Why did it happen all at once? And why did it stop just as suddenly? And just as Salem hunted witches, North America's forests would soon whisper of something bigger, hairier, and far harder to catch. The origins of the Bigfoot legend. Call it Sasquatch, Yeti, skunk ape, or simply Bigfoot stories of massive, hair-covered humanoids roaming the wilderness have persisted for centuries. In North America, the legend of Bigfoot gained traction in the mid-20th century, fueled by grainy photographs, plaster footprints, and shaky film clips. Most famously, the 1967 Patterson-Gimlin footage, which shows a large bipedal creature striding into myth. But where did the legend really begin? Indigenous tribes have long told stories of wild men, forest guardians, and giant creatures living on the edge of civilization. These weren't always monsters. Often, they were protectors or spirits. The modern version of Bigfoot, however, has evolved into a mix of folklore, conspiracy, and cryptozoological obsession. Skeptics blame hoaxes, misidentifications, and the power of suggestion. Others cite unclassified primates or relic populations of extinct hominids. But no body has ever been recovered. No bones. No conclusive DNA. Just footprints, blurry footage, and stories. Still, the idea lingers because it taps into something primal, the notion that there's still a wildness out there we haven't tamed, that the unknown can still breathe. And while Bigfoot may lurk in the shadows, one 19th century creature jumped right into the spotlight, literally. The identity of Spring-Heeled Jack. London, 1837. A woman answers a knock at the door. A tall figure with glowing red eyes and metallic claws leaps from the shadows, tearing her clothes, slashing at her with inhuman speed. He escapes not by running, but by vaulting over walls in a single bound. The newspapers soon name him Spring-Heeled Jack. And this was no one-off. For decades, sightings poured in from across England. A fire-breathing attacker, a phantom leaping over rooftops, a laughing demon in a cape. Some reports claimed he could vanish in an instant. Others described him as a prankster in armor. The police never caught him. The public never figured him out. So what was Spring-Heeled Jack? Theories ran wild. A nobleman playing cruel tricks. A performer with springs in his boots. An alien. A mass hallucination fueled by penny dreadfuls. None ever stuck. What made Jack terrifying wasn't just his agility, it was the randomness. He didn't kill, he didn't steal, he just appeared, terrified, and vanished. Jack became Victorian England's boogeyman real, enough to inspire police patrols, but slippery enough to become legend. And just like Jack slipped away into fog, so too did an entire crew from a ghost ship that refused to sink or stay put. The disappearance of the crew of the SS Bachimo. The Arctic isn't just cold, it's a vault. And sometimes, what it locks away isn't just ice, but entire stories. In 1931, the SS Bachimo, a steel-hulled cargo ship used by the Hudson's Bay Company, became trapped in pack ice off the Alaskan coast. The crew abandoned her, assuming she'd soon sink or break apart. But the Bachimo didn't go under. She drifted. For decades. She was spotted again and again adrift, empty and seemingly indestructible. Once in 1939, a group even boarded her, seeking shelter during a storm. She was still intact. Then again in the 40s, each time no crew, no logbook, no trace of human presence. Just the ship, floating like a phantom in slow-motion exile. By the 1960s, sightings ceased. She was never officially found again. What happened to the original crew who abandoned her? They were rescued, but the Bachimo continued her lonely voyage without them. Did someone try to salvage her and disappear? Could her last drift have carried her beneath the ice? She became known as the ghost ship of the Arctic, a maritime mystery that lived on the edge of freezing reality and haunting legend. And while this ship wandered for decades, another question arises: why did humanity suddenly choose to stop wandering altogether? The origins of the sudden emergence of agriculture. For over 200,000 years, Homo sapiens hunted, gathered, moved. Then, around 10,000 years ago, we stopped. We planted seeds, built villages, stored food. Agriculture emerged almost simultaneously in multiple regions: the Fertile Crescent, China, Mesoamerica. But why? And why then? It's one of history's greatest puzzles: the agricultural revolution. Something changed, and it changed everything. Farming created surplus. Surplus led to cities. Cities led to civilization. But the trigger remains mysterious. Theories abound. Climate stabilization after the last ice age? Rising populations demanding new food strategies? Religious shifts? Accidental discovery? But farming is hard, grueling, vulnerable to weather, and less nutritious than foraging. So why commit? Some suggest we were domesticated by crops as much as we domesticated them. Wheat needed us to thrive. We needed it to settle. Others think agriculture was less of a choice, more of a trapone we fell into and couldn't escape. Whatever the cause, the result was irreversible. The nomadic mind gave way to the rooted city dweller. And yet, even in this new world, old myths persisted, like the legend of a sea monster photographed in a Scottish lake, the identity of the Loch Ness Monster photographer. The most famous image of the Loch Ness Monster, the so-called surgeon's photograph, was taken in 1934 by a London physician named Robert Kenneth Wilson. The photo shows a long-necked creature rising from the misty water, its dark silhouette becoming the global symbol of cryptid belief. For decades, it was considered definitive proof that something large and strange lurked beneath Loch Ness. But then came the twist. In 1994, a confession emerged. The image was a hoax, a toy submarine with a sculpted head, planted by Wilson and conspirators to trick the world. The photo's perfect drama was its downfall. It was too good. Still, questions linger. Why did Wilson, a respected man, involve himself in a prank? Was he duped? Was the confession real? Or just another layer in the myth's evolution? Nessie sightings long predate the photo, stretching back centuries, and the loch's depth, darkness, and glacial origin make it an ideal stage for mysteries. Submarines, sonar scans, and drone footage have revealed nothing definitive, and yet the photo lives on, blurry, iconic, and perpetually unresolved. Like so many of history's mysteries, it's not the answer that survives, it's the image. And next, we descend from blurry lakes into the cold blackness of the ocean floor, where another vessel and its crew vanished under even murkier circumstances. The fate of the crew of the USS Scorpion. May 1968. The USS Scorpion, a nuclear-powered submarine with 99 crew aboard, disappears somewhere in the Atlantic while returning to its home port in Norfolk, Virginia. Days pass. No signals. No mayday. Eventually, only silence. Months later, the wreckage is located 11,000 feet beneath the surface, snapped in two, resting like a ghost at the bottom of the sea. Officially, the Navy ruled the loss was due to a catastrophic mechanical failure, perhaps a torpedo explosion or malfunction in the trash disposal unit. But that explanation never fully satisfied the families, or the growing swarm of theorists. The Cold War was in full swing. The Scorpion had recently trailed Soviet vessels. Some suggest it was sunk by a Soviet torpedo. Others whisper of a malfunctioning American weapon. Still others blame flawed design, rushed repairs, ignored warnings. The Scorpion had a long list of mechanical problems before its final voyage. But no definitive cause has ever been confirmed. The crew remains entombed in steel, a sealed chamber of secrets. Every so often, declassified documents surface, but never enough to close the case. And while the ocean swallowed one mystery whole, another took place on land, where an entire Roman legion walked into Scotland and never walked out. The disappearance of the Roman Ninth Legion. They were Rome's elite Legiones Hispana, hardened veterans of conquest. Then, sometime around 120 CE, they vanished. Stationed in Britain, tasked with maintaining Roman order on the frontier, the Ninth Legion reportedly marched north into Caledonia and disappeared from the historical record. No return, no bodies, no victory parades, just silence. Theories run rampant. One suggests the Legion was ambushed and annihilated by Pictish tribes in what's now Scotland. Others say the Ninth was transferred to another part of the empire, renamed, and lost in bureaucratic fog. Some speculate they were disbanded in disgrace after a rebellion, but archaeological records trail off abruptly. Inscriptions in York stop mentioning them, and the empire, famously obsessed with record-keeping, offers no obituary. The mystery has inspired novels, films, and countless historians. Could an entire legion, thousands of men, vanish without a trace? Maybe not all at once, but over time, scattered through battles, politics, and the decay of empire, their memory might have simply faded. Still, the image remains, an armored column marching into mist, never returning. And from rows of missing soldiers to rows of standing stones, the next puzzle rises from the fields of Francim, possibly old, perfectly aligned, and utterly unexplained. The purpose of the Karnak stones. Before Stonehenge, before the pyramids, before writing there, were the Karnak stones. Along the windswept coast of Brittany, France, more than 3,000 megalithic stones stretch across the countryside in precise rows and mysterious formations. Erected around 4,500 BCE, they are among the oldest and largest collections of standing stones in the world. But no one knows why they're there. Theories abound. Some say they were astronomical markers, tracking solstices and celestial movements. Others suggest they were part of a ritual landscape used in ceremonies long since forgotten. There's even speculation they were burial sites or territorial markers. The stones range from small pebbles to towering giants, some weighing several tons. Yet they were arranged with intention and effort that suggests purpose far beyond practicality. Local legends claim they were Roman soldiers turned to stone by a wizard, or ancient warriors petrified in battle. Archaeologists, of course, lean toward more terrestrial explanations, but the mystery endures because the stones refuse to explain themselves. Karnak is older than myth and immune to certainty. And like so many ancient enigmas, it stands as a monument not just to what was, but to what we may never fully understand. And in the realm of sacred artifacts, few objects inspire as much obsession or as much confusion as the legendary Holy Grail. The whereabouts of the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail. The cup of Christ. Said to have been used at the Last Supper and to have caught Jesus' blood at the crucifixion, it is a relic so sacred, so shrouded in myth, that it bridges the divide between faith and fantasy. But where is it? For centuries, legends have placed the Grail everywhere and nowhere. Medieval romances turned it into a divine object of quest, pursued by Arthurian knights and protected by secret brotherhoods. Some claimed it rested in Glastonbury, buried beneath a ruined abbey. Others said it was spirited away to Spain, hidden in a monastery. The Nazis searched for it during World War II, thinking it might grant divine power. Despite all this, no definitive artifact has ever been verified as the Grail. Many chalices claim the title. None hold universal acceptance. The mystery isn't just about a cup, it's about what the cup represents. Immortality, truth, salvation. Whether a physical object or a metaphor for spiritual enlightenment, the Holy Grail remains one of the most enduring legends in human history. And from prophecy to prophet, we now turn to another enigma cloaked in riddle and fame: a man who saw the future or wrote the past in code. The true identity of Nostradamus. Michel de Nostradam, better known as Nostradamus, is one of the most iconic names in the realm of prediction. His quatrains, four-line rhymed verse published in the 16th century, have been credited with foreseeing everything from the French Revolution to the rise of Hitler and even 9/11s. But how much of it is prophecy? And how much is projection? Born in 1503, Nostradamus was a physician, astrologer, and mystic. He wrote in cryptic language, blending anagrams, Latin, Greek, and obscure metaphors. This ambiguity allowed generations of readers to interpret his verses through the lens of hindsight. After every catastrophe, someone finds a matching quatrain. But who was he really? Some say he was a genuine visionary, tapping into the subconscious web of history. Others argue he was a shrewd writer who masked generalized social commentary in cryptic verse. His personal life remains partly obscured by legend, and though he worked as a physician during plagues, his methods were considered unorthodox, even by 16th century standards. Was he truly predicting the future, or simply chronicling human fears in poetic form? Nostradamus built his own mythology. But another collapse, more literal and devastating, reshaped the world around him: the mysterious, near-total end of the Bronze Age. The collapse of the Bronze Age. Around 1200 BCE, a web of powerful civilizations stretched across the eastern Mediterranean. The Mycenaeans in Greece, the Hittites in Anatolia, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Canaanites, all interconnected through trade, war, and culture. Then, within a few decades, they all collapsed. Cities were burned, writing systems vanished, entire cultures disappeared. The lights of the Bronze Age went out, and no one fully knows why. This wasn't just one empire falling. It was an extinction-level event for the ancient world. Some blame the enigmatic Sea Peoples, invaders who left a trail of ruin in their wake but whose identity remains debated. Others suggest climate change caused droughts and famines, leading to migration, war, and chaos. Earthquakes, plagues, economic collapse, all are on the suspect list. But no single theory explains it all. This was a system failure when too many interdependent states crumbled at once, leaving a 1,000-year gap before the rise of classical civilizations. The Bronze Age collapse is one of the greatest historical blackouts. Like a fire that burned through a library, it left behind only ashes and riddles. And yet, even amid that ruin, ancient navigators may have discovered tools to find the sun without seeing the sky. The mystery of the Viking Sunstone. The Vikings were master seafarers, conquering and colonizing swaths of the North Atlantic, long before compasses reached Europe. But how did they navigate in the fog-choked seas of Scandinavia and beyond, especially when the sun was hidden behind clouds or below the horizon? Enter the legend of the Viking Sunstone. Medieval texts mention it in Passinga Solarstein, used to locate the sun's position on overcast days. But what was it? For centuries, the answer eluded historians. Then came speculation about Iceland's spar, a type of calcite crystal capable of polarizing light. When held up to the sky, even on cloudy days, it can reveal the direction of the sun based on the orientation of polarized light. If true, this would mean the Vikings used sophisticated optical tools 1,000 years before modern science even understood the principle. But here's the catch. No confirmed sunstone has ever been found in a Viking ship or grave. Is it just a legend, misunderstood over time? Or were the stones lost, repurposed, or never buried at all? The idea of ancient mariners using a natural crystal as a celestial GPS is both scientifically plausible and mythically romantic. And while the Sunstone may have guided warriors at sea, the next tale centers on a political warrior who was assassinated in his own state, with motives still cloaked in suspicion. The assassination of William Goebel. The 30th of January, 1900. Kentucky's capital. William Goebel, a fiery Democrat and reformer, is shot by a sniper while walking to the State House. The twist? Just hours later, he's declared governor of Kentucky in a hotly contested election. Goebel becomes the only U.S. governor ever assassinated while in office, but the who and the why remain murky. Goebel's political style was aggressive. He fought corporate corruption, particularly targeting railroad interests. His enemies were many. His supporters were passionate. His election victory was hotly disputed, with accusations of fraud and political trickery on both sides. The man convicted of the shooting, Caleb Powers, was the Republican Secretary of State. He claimed innocence, insisting the trial was politically motivated. His conviction was later overturned, and others were tried, but no definitive evidence ever nailed down the true assassin. Was it a political rival? A hired gun? A lone actor in a climate thick with vendetta? The murder became a symbol of the explosive, sometimes deadly chaos of American politics at the turn of the century. And just like Goebel's fatal walk, our next mystery begins with a circle pressed into clay, adorned with strange symbols and unread to this day. The purpose of the Phaistos disc. Discovered in 1908 in the ruins of the Minoan Palace at Phaistos on Crete, the Phaistos disc is a palm-sized object of baked clay, spiraled with stamped symbols unlike any other script ever found. It's believed to date back to around 1700 BCE, yet its meaning, origin, and purpose remain a complete mystery. There are 241 tokens on the disc, composed of 45 distinct character images of human figures, animals, tools, and abstract shapes arranged in a clockwise spiral. What makes it even more enigmatic is its method of creation. Each symbol was pressed into the clay with a stamp, suggesting a form of movable type thousands of years before Gutenberg. But no other artifact like it has ever been found. Was it a prayer? A legal document? A game board? A religious hymn? A calendar? Every theory has its champions, but none are confirmed. Attempts to decode it are stymied by a lack of context. We don't even know what language it represents or if it's a language at all. The Phaistos disc sits in a museum in Heraklion, protected but unsolved. Like a whispered message from a forgotten world, it resists translation, daring us to guess. And just as this artifact may encode a ritual or epidemic, the next mystery examines how a real malaria took hold of an empire that thought itself invincible. The origins of the malaria epidemic in ancient Rome. Rome may have conquered the known world, but it couldn't conquer the mosquito. By the late Roman Republic and well into the empire, the swamps and marshlands around the city, especially the Pontine Marshashad, become breeding grounds for a killer, malaria. The disease didn't just afflict the poor. Emperors, senators, and soldiers succumbed to its cycles of fever and death. And yet, for a civilization that left behind laws, aqueducts, and concrete cities, the origins of this epidemic remain disturbingly unclear. Was it always there? Or did it arrive via conquest, migration, or trade? Some historians suggest it was endemic to the region, gradually worsening as Roman engineering disrupted local ecosystems. Others argue that as the empire expanded, it imported more than spices, and slaveship brought new pathogens from Africa and the East. The Roman medical texts mention fevers and chills, but they didn't understand the vector. How could they? DNA evidence in recent decades has confirmed the presence of malaria in ancient remains, but the scope of its impact is still debated. Did it help weaken the empire from within? Did it shape settlement patterns, population control, even military campaigns? What's certain is that it was invisible, inescapable, and incurable, just like the fate of two royal brothers who vanished into a tower and never came out. The fate of the princes in the tower In 1483, Edward V, aged 12, and his younger brother, Richard of Shrewsbury, aged 9, were placed in the Tower of London by their uncle Richard, Duke of Gloucester allegedly, for their protection. They were never seen again. Richard soon crowned himself King Richard III. And the boys? They became shadows absent from public, unmentioned in court, ultimately erased. So what happened? The prevailing theory is grim. Richard III had them killed to solidify his grip on the throne. But if so, where are the records? Why no trial, no body, no official explanation? 2 skeletons were found buried under a stairwell in the tower centuries later, but no DNA has confirmed their identities. And Richard's defenders argue there were other suspects: Henry Tudor, later Henry VII, who seized the throne and married their sister, or agents acting on their own. The mystery of the princes is more than political, it's psychological. The idea of children, born into royalty, locked away and eliminated without ceremony, has haunted English history for centuries. Shakespeare turned them into spectral symbols of innocence, lost to ambition. And while they were swallowed by stone walls, another man older, more powerful vanished just as definitively. Once again, Judge Crater steps onto the stage. The disappearance of Judge Crater, revisited. Yes, we've been here before. But like a true historical phantom, Judge Joseph Force Crater won't stay off the record. His vanishing act in 1930 is so perfectly surreal it begs a double take, because what makes Crater's case unsettling isn't just the lack of evidence, it's the abundance of intrigue. A New York Supreme Court justice with a taste for high society and low secrets, Crater was last seen leaving a Manhattan steakhouse. His wife was at their summer home. His bank account had been quietly drained. Legal documents had mysteriously vanished from his office. And despite a media frenzy that coined the phrase, "pulling a crater," no one has ever found a body or a motive that sticks. Was he murdered over a political scandal? Did he flee to escape blackmail? Witnesses placed him with showgirls, gangsters, politicians, and shadowy figures who might have wanted him gone. And each thread, when tugged, snaps off into nothing. Theories still flourish. Dead in a ditch? Living under a new name? Buried in the foundations of a New York building? The mystery is an Ouroborosiating its own tale, looping through generations. And speaking of mysteries wrapped in bullets and global war, our next shadowy death strikes at the heart of geopolitics. The assassination that sparked the 20th century's bloodiest chapter. The true motives behind the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. The 28th of June, 1914, Sarajevo. The heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, is assassinated by Gavrilo Princip, a young Bosnian Serb nationalist. The shot echoes through history, lighting the fuse that ignites World War I. But behind the gunpowder and blood lies a question still whispered in the corridors of history. Was Princip acting alone, or was he just one puppet in a far more complex game? Officially, the assassin belonged to the Black Hand, a secret Serbian nationalist organization with ties to the military. Their goal was clear: disrupt Austro-Hungarian rule in the Balkans. But conspiracy theories go deeper. Some argue the Serbian government was more involved than it admitted. Others suspect the Austrians used the assassination as a convenient pretext for war, knowing full well it would trigger a wider conflict. What's even stranger is the chain of mishaps that led to the killing. A failed bomb, a wrong turn, a chance encounter. It all seems too chaotic to be a planned, yet too perfect to be coincidence. Who truly wanted the Archduke dead? Nationalists? Imperialists? Bankers? Spies? No one knows for sure. What we do know is that his death unraveled empires, and in another town, decades later, a far stranger killer would emerge not with politics, but with gas. The identity of the Mad Gasser of Mattoon. Mattoon, Illinois. A quiet, Midwestern town in wartime America. And then, without warning, people begin reporting something truly bizarre, an unseen figure releasing a strange gas into their homes at night. Victims describe paralysis, nausea, dizziness. Some report a sweet, sickly smell. Others claim to see a tall, shadowy figure fleeing the scene. The media dubbed him the Mad Gasser, but no one was ever caught. Was it a real person? A case of mass hysteria? Some argue it was wartime anxiety manifested through shared delusion. Others think it was a prankster or perhaps even military testing gone awry. Chemical traces were never confirmed, and the symptoms were inconsistent. Still, the panic was real. Families barricaded windows. Armed neighbors patrolled the streets. The police launched investigations but found nothing tangible. Then, just as quickly as it began, the attack stopped. No explanation. No arrest. Just silence. The Mad Gasser has since become folklore, a phantom attacker whose tools were invisible and whose crimes left no fingerprints. And speaking of ghosts hiding in mountains, the next legend is one of gold, betrayal, and death, the Lost Dutchman's Mine. The mystery of the Lost Dutchman's gold mine. Somewhere in Arizona's Superstition Mountains lies a treasure so massive, so cursed, that it's drawn hundreds of fortune-seeker sand swallowed more than a few. The legend begins in the 19th century with a man known as Jacob Waltz, the Dutchman, actually German, who reportedly discovered a fabulously rich gold vein and kept its location secret until his death. On his deathbed in 1891, Waltz allegedly gave vague directions to a woman who had cared for him. Since then, generations of adventurers have searched the craggy, cactus-choked terrain for signs of the mine. Some claim to have found petroglyphs, stone maps, strange formations, but no one has ever extracted a single nugget of proven Dutchman gold. Many believe the mine never existed. Others insist it's real and fiercely protected by the land itself, by spirits, or by descendants of those who originally discovered it. Over the years, numerous treasure hunters have gone missing. Some were found dead, others simply disappeared. The Superstition Mountains live up to their name. Whether hiding a fortune or just a fatal dream, they remain a labyrinth of rock and mirage. And just like this alleged gold hoard carved into the desert, another mystery lies etched into the soil, coiled, like a snake too big for one culture to claim. The purpose of the Great Serpent Mound. In the green hills of southern Ohio, a serpent slithers across the earth 1,348 feet long, undulating in precise coils, mouth agape as if about to swallow a massive oval. This is the Great Serpent Mound, a prehistoric effigy whose purpose is still hotly debated more than 1,000 years after it was built. Constructed by indigenous peoples, possibly the Adena around 1000 BCE, or the Fort Ancient culture closer to 1070 CE, the mound's exact origin remains a point of contention, but its grandeur and alignments suggest intentionality far beyond decoration. Its coils align with solstices and lunar phases, hinting at a celestial function. Some believe it served as an observatory, a sacred calendar pressed into the ground. Others argue it was ceremonial, a place of offerings, burial, or mythic reenactment. The serpent motif is common in Native American cosmology, often associated with rebirth, the underworld, or powerful spiritual forces. Still, no definitive explanation has emerged. Its scale defies casual construction. Its shape is unmistakably alive, pulsing with purpose. But what that purpose was, ritual, astronomical, or something more abstract, is still cloaked in soil. And just as this great earthwork coils in mystery, another vessel explosive and iconic left behind a blast and a controversy that hasn't cooled since 1898, the fate of the crew of the USS Maine. The 15th of February, 1898, Havana Harbor. The USS Maine, a U.S. Navy battleship, explodes suddenly and violently, killing 266 of the 354 crew aboard. The wreckage sinks to the bottom, and with it, America's innocence air, at least its plausible deniability. The phrase, "Remember the Maine, to hell with Spain," became a battle cry, pushing the United States into the Spanish-American War. But the cause of the explosion? That remains murky. Initial investigations blamed a Spanish mine. Later reports, including a 1,976 Navy analysis, pointed to a coal bunker fire igniting nearby ammunition. Still, theories persist: sabotage, mechanical failure, or a false flag operation meant to justify war. What truly clouds the mystery is the political urgency that followed. Newspapers fanned the flames literally and figuratively. The push to war was faster than the science. And the wreckage? It was raised in 1911, studied, then scuttled at sea along with many potential answers. Was it a tragedy of bad luck, or a manipulated event that changed global power dynamics? The ghost of the Maine still looms in military lore, and not far behind it is a mystery even stranger: two dead men on a Brazilian hillside, their faces covered by lead masks and surrounded by notes no one can decode. The mystery of the lead masks case. August 1966. Two dead men are found lying on a grassy hill near Rio de Janeiro. They are dressed in matching suits, wearing waterproof coats, and most bizarrely lead masks, like thick sunglasses made of metal, shielding their eyes. There are no wounds, no signs of struggle. Nearby, police find an empty water bottle, 2 towels, and a cryptic note. 1630 be at the determined place. 1830 ingest capsules. After effect protect metals, wait for mask signal. That's it. No poison found, no drugs, no explanation. The dead men were identified as Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana, 2 electronics repairmen from a nearby town. They had told their families they were going to buy materials for work. Instead, they ended up dead in one of Brazil's strangest unsolved cases. Speculation spread like wildfire. Was it a ritual? A cult? A science experiment gone wrong? Some believed they were attempting to contact extraterrestrials or access another dimension. Others pointed to spiritualist beliefs and theories about magnetic fields or communication with higher beings. The case remains open. No cause of death was ever determined. Just 2 men, lead masks, and a final note that reads more like a riddle than a suicide plan. And speaking of masked mysteries, our next subject returns us to London, 1888, where one killer wore many names, but only one truly stuck: the identity of the Whitechapel murderer. He went by many names: Leather Apron, the Fiend, the Whitechapel murderer, but history remembers him as Jack the Ripper. And yet, that last name is based on a letter that might have been a hoax. What remains undisputed are the brutal facts. In the fall of 1888, 5 women were murdered in the Whitechapel district of London. Their throats were slit, their bodies mutilated with chilling precision, and their killer was never caught. More than a century later, the list of suspects has grown into a rogues gallery of possibility: doctors, barbers, butchers, royals, artists, and lunatics. Some believe Jack was a surgeon. Others think he was a foreigner, scapegoated by a xenophobic public. The letters allegedly sent by the killersome, drenched in red ink, might have been written by journalists trying to boost circulation. Was there even just one killer? The canonical 5 victims share horrific similarities, but other murders at the time muddy the waters. Even modern forensics can't provide a clear answer. Jack the Ripper's legend thrives not because of who he was, but because of who he could have been: anyone and no one, a shadow in the fog. And from one isolated horror to another, our next mystery unfolds on a remote Scottish island where 3 men vanished from a lighthouse without a trace. The disappearance of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers. December 1900. A supply ship arrives at the Flannan Isles, a cluster of barren rocks off Scotland's western coast, to find something terrifying. The lighthouse is dark. The clock inside is stopped. Meals are untouched, the beds are unmade, and the three lighthouse keepers, Thomas Marshall, James Ducat, and Donald MacArthur, are gone. The doors were locked. The logs hinted at a violent storm, but weather reports showed calm seas. One keeper wrote of strange behavior from the others. The final entry read simply, "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." Then, nothing. The official explanation. They were swept away by a rogue wave while trying to secure equipment. But critics argue this is too tidy. Why would all three leave the safety of the lighthouse against protocol? And why was one man's oilskin coat still hanging inside? Rumors flourished. Some claimed the men were taken by a sea monster. Others believed they fought and killed each other. A few even whispered supernatural causes, ghost ships, parallel dimensions, divine retribution. Whatever the truth, the island remains untouched, silent, and cold. And just as the Atlantic swallowed these men, another mystery comes from the mouth of ancient literature. Who was Homer, really? The true identity of Homer. We all know his name, Homer, the blind bard of ancient Greece, the man credited with composing the Iliad and the Odyssey, two of the most influential works in Western literature. But here's the twist. No one actually knows who Homer was, or if he even existed. Was he one man, a collective of storytellers, a title passed down like shaman or scribe? The earliest written versions of his epics appeared centuries after the events they describe, suggesting they were shaped by oral tradition. But someone or someone shad to weave the tales together, and that someone has been a ghost in academia ever since. Some scholars argue he was from Ionia, based on dialect and references. Others claim Homer was a woman, or a compiler of myths from across the Mediterranean. His blindness? Possibly metaphorical, a literary archetype of the visionary poet. Whoever he was, the name Homer has become a symbol of genius wrapped in obscurity. He's less a person and more a placeholder for a cultural mind that gave us gods, heroes, and monsters. And speaking of ancient death and divine secrets, our next mystery opens a tomb that cursed its discoverers, or so the legends say. The origins of the Curse of Tutankhamun. When British archaeologist Howard Carter discovered the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun in 1922, it was the archaeological find of the century. A sealed tomb, undisturbed for millennia, filled with unimaginable treasures and a perfectly preserved boy king. But alongside the golden sarcophagus and alabaster relics came something darker, a wave of sudden deaths, strange illnesses, and whispered warnings. The curse of the pharaoh. It began with Lord Carnarvon, the expedition's sponsor. He died mysteriously a few months after entering the tomb, allegedly from a mosquito bite that turned septic. His dog howled and dropped dead at the same moment, thousands of miles away. Newspapers went wild. Soon, other members of the team and visitors to the tomb fell ill or perished. Some died violently. Others faded under inexplicable conditions. Skeptics point to mold, bacteria, or coincidence. After all, Howard Carter himself lived for another 17 years. But believers in the curse note the eerie pattern and the ancient warnings supposedly inscribed within the tomb, though no such inscription has ever been authenticated. Was it psychological suggestion? Tabloid hysteria? Or did ancient priests build real safeguards into the burial chamber of their god king? Whatever the truth, Tut's tomb became more than a find. It became a legend. And from mysterious relics to mysterious machines, the next artifact is one that might have sparked electricity before Edison ever flipped a switch. The purpose of the Baghdad battery. It looks like a jug, clay, about the size of a soda can, with a copper cylinder inside and an iron rod in the center. Found near Baghdad in the 1930s, this 2000-year-old object has become one of the strangest archaeological anomalies in history. Why? Because it might be a battery. Known as the Baghdad Battery, it dates back to the Parthian or Sassanid period, and some believe it could have been used to generate small amounts of electricity when filled with an acidic liquid. The implications are staggering. Was ancient Mesopotamia experimenting with electrochemistry? And if so, theories abound. Perhaps it was used for electroplating coating jewelry with thin layers of gold or silver. Maybe it had a religious or ritual purpose, with the mild shock considered divine. Or maybe, just maybe, we're projecting modern tech onto ancient mystery. Critics argue that no wires or clear uses were ever found with the object. It might have been a simple storage vessel, misinterpreted, but the configuration is suspiciously close to modern battery construction. Whether coincidence or primitive science, the Baghdad Battery sparks the imagination. And like any good enigma, it leads directly into another colony carved out of wilderness, leaving behind only one word etched in wood: Croatoan. The disappearance of the Roanoke colony's Croatoan word. Roanoke Island, off the coast of what is now North Carolina, a group of English settlersmen, women, and children vanish without a trace. When Governor John White returns in 1590 after 3 years away, he finds the colony deserted. No bodies, no signs of struggle. Just one cryptic clue, the word Croatoan carved into a wooden post. That's it. No diary, no final message, just a single word. Croatoan was the name of a nearby island and a friendly Native American tribe. But when White attempted to investigate, bad weather and logistics forced him to turn back. He never saw the settlers or his own granddaughter, Virginia Dare, again. Theories range from the plausible to the paranormal. Some believe the colonists assimilated with local tribes, abandoning English ways for survival. Others suggest they were killed by hostile forces. Still others imagine disease, starvation, or a failed attempt to sail back to England. And then there are the wilder theories: alien abductions, time slips, or secret voyages elsewhere. Each generation finds new meaning in that single word. Croatoan remains one of the most chilling literary footprints in history. And while Roanoke disappeared into the forest, another empire older and grander crumbled beneath one, vanishing just as mysteriously. The collapse of the Khmer Empire. At its height, the Khmer Empire ruled much of Southeast Asia. Centered in present-day Cambodia, it left behind one of the most spectacular monuments ever built, Angkor Wat, a sprawling temple complex so vast it was once thought to be a myth. For centuries, the Khmer dominated trade, warfare, and religion across the region, but then, sometime in the 15th century, it all unraveled. The capital was abandoned, the jungle moved in, and the empire faded like mist under a rising sun. So what happened? Historians have pointed fingers in every direction. Climate change is a popular culprit. Droughts followed by intense flooding may have devastated the intricate hydraulic systems the Khmer used to manage their water. Without water, their agriculture failed. Without agriculture, cities emptied. Others argue internal strife played a role. Succession disputes, rebellions, and the sheer complexity of maintaining a vast, overextended bureaucracy. There's also the theory of foreign invasion, particularly by the Siamese, who may have sacked Angkor and pushed the Khmer southward. But like many collapses, it likely wasn't one thing. It was everything, all at once. Systems strained, nature shifted, and a civilization slowly caved inward. And speaking of things carved in stone, the next mystery is a much smaller puzzle tucked away in the woods of Germany and etched with signs no one can translate. The mystery of the Hessian stone. In a secluded forest in the German region of Hesse, there stands a stone that shouldn't be there, or, at least, shouldn't look the way it does. It's carved with strange inscriptions, symbols that defy easy categorization. Not quite runic, not quite Roman, No known alphabet matches it. No historical record explains its origin. And yet, there it is, weathered, silent, and deeply puzzling. Locals have passed down stories of the stone for generations. Some say it marks the burial site of an ancient warrior. Others whisper that it's cursed, a remnant of dark rites or pagan worship. The more academic theories suggest it might be a boundary marker or part of a lost system of communication. But nothing sticks. Archaeologists haven't agreed on a time period, much less a meaning. Its style doesn't match known monuments in the region. It appears both ancient and oddly modern. Some even suggest it's a hoax planted by a prankster in the 1800s. And yet, the mystery endures. Why would someone fake something so deliberately obscure in a place so remote? Why does no one claim it? From a stone no one understands, we turn now to a cloth that billions have seen yet whose truth still lies in shadow and doubt. The true purpose of the Shroud of Turin. It's arguably the most famous piece of linen in history. The Shroud of Turin bears the faint, haunting image of a man who appears to have been crucified, wounds on the wrists, feet, and side. Bloodstains mark the cloth. For many, it is nothing less than the burial shroud of Jesus Christ. For others, it's a medieval forgery created to stir faith or fill coffers. The shroud first appeared in recorded history in the 14th century. Skeptics note that this timeline is suspiciously convenient, coinciding with a European boom in relic trading. Radiocarbon dating in 1988 seemed to support the forgery theory, dating the cloth to the 1200s. Case closed? Not quite. Other tests have challenged those results, pointing to potential contamination or repairs done in the Middle Ages that skewed the data. The image itself remains baffling. No known pigment, brushstroke, or photographic process explains how it was formed. It's a perfect negative, a snapshot burned into cloth centuries before photography existed. Is it the real burial cloth of Christ? A spiritual metaphor? An intentional mystery? Like a Rorschach test, for the faithful and the skeptical alike, the shroud reveals more about the viewer than the man within. And as the face of one mystery fades, another vessel equally ghostly awaits us just off the Carolina coast, abandoned, adrift, and forever unanswered. The disappearance of the crew of the Carol A.D. Earring. January 1921. The five-masted schooner Carol A.D. Earring runs aground on the treacherous Diamond Shoals off the coast of North Carolina. The ship is intact. Its lifeboats are missing. The galley is set for a meal that was never eaten, but the crew last one of them is gone. What happened aboard the Deering during its final voyage? The ship had set sail from Rio de Janeiro back to the United States, but tensions were reported between the captain and his first mate. After a stop in Barbados, both men seemed agitated. When the ship was last seen by a lightship operator, a strange man-ought the captain hailed from the deck, stating the vessel had lost its anchors. That was the final confirmed communication. Speculation spirals. Was it a mutiny? A hijacking? Did the crew abandon ship during a storm and never make it to shore? Others have blamed pirates or even Prohibition-era rum runners. Some point to a bizarre string of disappearances in the area around that time, tying the Deering to the eerie lore of the Bermuda Triangle. But no wreckage from the lifeboats, no bodies, no journal entries were ever found. From an abandoned schooner to an anonymous axeman, our next mystery swings straight into the heart of jazz-soaked New Orleans. The identity of the Axeman of New Orleans. Between May 1918 and October 1919, New Orleans lived in terror. A figure, later dubbed the Axeman, broke into homes late at night, attacking sleeping residents, often couples with an axe. Most of the time, the weapon belonged to the victims themselves. The attacks were brutal, messy, and almost ritualistic. And then, without arrest or explanation, the killer vanished. His targets seemed random Italians, grocers, ordinary working-class families. But then came the letter. Purportedly written by the Axeman himself and sent to the newspapers, it was a blend of satanic bravado and dark humor. He claimed to be a spirit and a demon from hottest hell, and warned that he'd kill again unless every jazz band in the city played on the night of the 19th of March, 1919. That night, the city turned into a chaotic concert. And true to the promise, no one was killed. Then, silence. No one was ever caught. Suspects ranged from mafia hitmen to deranged loners. Some believe there were multiple axemen. Others claim it was all a hoax, with a few copycat killers inflating the legend. The music saved them for a night. But the question lingers like smoke. Who was the Axeman? And while he vanished into legend, the next mystery sinks deeper into the ocean's floor, where a pirate's fortune may still lie untouched. The whereabouts of Blackbeard's treasure. Edward Teachbetter, known as Blackbeard, wasn't just the most infamous pirate of the Golden Age. He was also a man who understood theater. With lit fuses in his beard and a massive ship bristling with cannon, he ruled the seas with reputation alone. But when he was finally cornered and killed off the coast of North Carolina in 1718, something was missing. His treasure. Legend has it that Blackbeard amassed a fortune in gold, silver, and precious gems splundered from ships across the Caribbean and the Atlantic. But after his death, none of it was found. Where did it go? Some say he buried it, possibly on one of the countless uncharted islands along the American coastline. Others suggest he divided it among his crew before his final battle. There's even speculation that he sank it intentionally, marking the location in a way only he could decode. Treasure hunters have spent centuries chasing clues, old maps, cryptic codes, sunken wrecks, but the haul remains stubbornly absent. Was the treasure ever real? Or did Blackbeard's real wealth lie in fear, not gold? Regardless, his legend remains richer than any chest of doubloons. And from pirate gold to pandemic death, our next mystery takes us into the arteries of a medieval apocalypse. The true cause of the Black Death. When the Black Death tore through Europe in the mid-14th century, it didn't just kill it, annihilate it. Between 1347 and 1351, it wiped out as much as half the continent's population. Entire villages vanished. Cities were gutted. The social fabric of Europe unraveled in real time, replaced by mass graves, religious hysteria, and total collapse. The official cause? Yersinia pestis, the bacterium carried by fleas on rats. But that explanation, while neat, doesn't fully satisfy. For one thing, the speed and scale of the pandemic are difficult to reconcile with just rat-borne transmission. Plague symptoms varied widely from place to place. Some towns had days to react, others fell in hours, and in areas where rats weren't even prevalent, death still followed. Could it have been an airborne strain of plague, a viral co-infection, or something entirely different, an environmental toxin, a celestial event, or even an early bioweapon? Historical accounts don't help much. Some describe buboes and fever. Others speak of bleeding from the eyes, madness, and death in mere minutes. And while the DNA of Yersinia pestis has been found in mass graves, it's not the whole story. The Black Death is often portrayed as a known event, but the more you look, the stranger it becomes. And from death on a massive scale, we now descend into one of the most haunting stories of youthful faith, doomed ambition, and historical disappearance: the Children's Crusade. The fate of the Children's Crusade. A boy, either German or French, depending on the account, claims he's been called by God to lead a crusade of children to the Holy Land. He gathers thousands of young followers, many of them preteens, who believe that their purity will succeed where hardened warriors have failed. No swords, no shields. Just songs, crosses, and blind devotion. What happens next is shrouded in myth, horror, and historical uncertainty. One version says many of the children died crossing the Alps. Another claims they made it to the Mediterranean, where merchants promised them passage to Jerusalem only to sell them into slavery. Some stories suggest that a few survived, founding small religious communities. Others say the crusade never happened at all, that it was a later invention, a parable of innocence exploited. But there are enough records, letters, chronicles, fragmented eyewitness accounts suggest that something tragic took place. Maybe it wasn't a single event, but several independent movements conflated into one narrative. Still, the image lingers, thousands of children, vanishing on a journey of impossible hope. No return, no graves, just silence. And speaking of massive efforts and impossible logistics, our next enigma involves ancient stones hauled across countries into one of the world's most famous circles, the mystery of the Stonehenge Bluestones. Stonehenge is already strange, a ring of towering stones arranged with astronomical precision, built in stages over 1,500 years. But stranger still is the origin of the smaller inner circle of stones known as the Bluestones. These are not local to the Salisbury Plain. They come from the Preseli Hills of Wales, some 150 miles away. And nobody knows how they got there. The stones weigh up to 4 tons each. Transporting them over that distance, across rivers, forests, and mountains, would be a colossal task even today. For prehistoric builders, without wheels, roads, or cranes, it sounds absurd. Some theories propose the stones were dragged overland using sledges and manpower. Others suggest they were transported by water rafted down rivers and coastlines. A few archaeologists even entertain the possibility of glacial movement during the Ice Age, though this undermines the human ingenuity at the site's heart. Then there's the question of why. Why go through the trouble to move these particular stones from so far away? Did they hold sacred properties? Were they part of a tribal identity? A pilgrimage path? The Bluestones are not just architectural components, they're cultural riddles. Each one whispers of hands long gone and meanings long buried. And just as Stonehenge defies easy answers, our next mystery unfolds with wings, eyes like red embers, and a bridge destined to fall. The origins of the Mothman sightings. Point Pleasant, West Virginia, the 15th of November, 1966. Two young couples driving near an abandoned TNT factory spot something that would become the cornerstone of modern American folklore, a tall, winged creature with glowing red eyes. The Mothman. It flew after their car, defying logic, gravity, and explanation. For over a year, reports of this creature surged. It was seen near the old World War II munitions site, hovering over the town, even standing in people's yards. It wasn't just one sighting, it was dozens. Witnesses described it as part man, part bird, and all nightmare. And then came the real horror. On the 15th of December, 1967, the Silver Bridge connecting Point Pleasant to Ohio collapsed during rush hour, killing 46 people. The sightings stopped. Many believe the Mothman had been an ominous harbinger of doom rather than the cause. Skeptics blamed misidentified birds or mass hysteria. Others linked the sightings to psychological stress during the Cold War or to chemical exposure from the TNT area. Still, the legend grew. Books were written. Films were made. Was it a real creature? A collective hallucination? Or something older, a regional echo of ancient winged spirits? Whatever it was, the Mothman's wingspan has stretched far beyond Appalachia and etched itself into the darker corners of American myth. Now, from winged omens to tracks carved in stone, our next mystery digs into the very bedrock of Maltaware. Deep grooves run like scars with no clear maker. The true purpose of the Maltese cart ruts. Scattered across the rocky landscapes of Malta and Gozo are bizarre parallel grooves cut deep into the limestone-like tire tracks from ancient chariots. These are the Maltese cart ruts. Some run for miles. Others cross, or intersect, like prehistoric highways. A few even run straight into the sea. But here's the problem. No one knows who made them, why, or how. The ruts are spaced too narrowly for modern carts, and the rock is far too hard to be worn down easily. Some ruts measure up to 24 inches deep in absurd depth for normal wear and tear. Were they cut intentionally? If so, for what purpose? Transport? Ritual? Engineering? Some theories suggest they were carved by Bronze Age peoples using wooden sledges dragged over soft rock before time, and erosion hardened it into what we see today. Others float the idea of ceremonial paths or channels for water, grain, or even ritual processions. Then there are the more fringe ideas. Evidence of ancient aliens, lost civilizations, or remnants of pre-Ice Age human activity. Whatever their origin, the cart ruts challenge the timeline of technological development. They hint at a society with methods and motives we've yet to decipher. And from tracks in stone to tracks in air, our next mystery rises with a plane, a parachute, and a man who vanished mid-fall, leaving only money, a legend, and a sky full of questions.